I'd like to call this meeting of the Town of Goshen Planning Board to order. Will please rise and pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. November 16th, 2023 will be the first. Do we have any comments or revisions? Are these going to you, Kelly, or?
Yep, they're on me.
Okay. First page, paragraph that starts with Mr. Burgess.
Yeah.
It should say, but corroborate what the applicant stated in the letter.
But corroborated.
On page 3, paragraph starting with Mr. Dropkin, it says, Mr. Hoffman stated that it is in excess of Cornell's recommendation. It should be or Canavan.
No,
No?
that was the driveway distance separation rather than the wells.
So it's a Cornell?
I think it was a Cornell study.
Cornell local rules.
Okay, fair enough. Page 4,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
it's okay.
Paragraph Patricia Flynn.
Yes.
The second to last sentence is Mr. Evers informed the board that he was told it was temporary. Spelling error, a little further down, Ms. Norton reviewed, second line should say was no way. And the other was a question at the bottom of the page, same page. Should the review of the resolution follow the closing of the public hearing, as opposed to the other way around? Other comments from the board? Revisions? Not, could I have a motion then to approve the minutes of November 16th, 2023 as revised?
I'll make the motion.
Neil, second by?
I'll second it.
Giovanni, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Next item would be the minutes of January 4th, 2024. Comments or revisions? Page 6?
It's always page 6.
I could have started on 1.
No, I'm not.
Page 6, second paragraph from the bottom, the sentence that says he further stated that his recollection. Yep.
I was really trying to emphasize the his.
And you did. And page 9, just a question. Paragraph again starting with Mr. Burgess reviewed his comments. Mr. Holmes noted that there's an intermittent stream that will be discharged into. Maybe we should say that treated sewage effluent will be discharged into.
Okay.
Other comments, revisions? Not, could I have a motion then to approve the minutes as revised? Eric, second by Neil. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Next will be the minutes of February 29, 2024. Revisions? Pardon? Okay. On page 2, sentence starting with whereupon the board discussed and also engineer Hoffman reviewed site distances to the SIGHT. Other comments, revisions?
Nope.
Could I have a motion then to approve the minutes as modified?
I'll make the motion.
Marty, second by Seamus. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? One abstention.
Who was the exception, I'm sorry? Thank you, Ed.
Next would be the minutes of March 7, 2024. Revisions. Okay, on page 2, vote by proper motion. Should say granted 2 90-day extensions. And on page 7, just for clarification, the 3 votes all say that Mr. Weir recused. I think that might be a carryover from some of the others. I don't know that you recused all those.
Sent you an email.
I didn't see the email, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
it was a
Two.
copy and paste.
Yeah.
From the previous one, which I reviewed myself.
3 locations.
Okay.
Any other comments or revisions? Could I have a motion then to approve the minutes as revised?
I'll make the motion.
Neil, second by?
I'll second.
Seamus, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
I abstain.
1 abstention.
Thank you.
And lastly, the minutes of March 21st, 2024.
I was on a roll.
Yes, you were.
I'm impressed.
All caught up.
I am impressed.
I know, I'm impressed.
The email was blowing up.
All right?
Yeah.
Page 3.
All right, I made it page 3 this time.
Paragraph starting again with Mr. Burgess. The very last line should say telephone poles, not telephone phones. Other comments or revisions? In that case, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as modified this evening?
So moved.
Eric, second by
I'll second it.
Giovanni. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay. Minutes are done. Minutes are current. Okay.
That's so many minutes, I think that makes an hour.
Almost.
I think Tanya's not allowed to be absent.
Okay.
No, it's okay, you're good.
Sorry about that. It wasn't yours.
But we have it. That's the important thing. Okay, next item on the agenda is a public hearing. SR 94 LLC Solar Project Lightstar Renewables 20-1-21.12. An application for a site plan and special permit for a solar energy system on 60.7 plus or minus acres along Randall Street, New York State Route 94 in the CO zone, AQ3 floodplain and ponding area overlays. And this is going to be a continuance of the public hearing from February 1st, 2024. Kelly.
Yes, the applicant's here to give a brief presentation, and then once that's done, we'll have you open the public hearing for you, and
And
the
then
town
for the
board
town.
open their public.
Do we have people from the public for this particular application? Okay, thank you.
You want to invite him up? Do I see it?
Yeah, you can move closer if you want to see it, or you can do that when
We
you're.
have the board with the display if you wish to see it.
I have copies.
You have a copy?
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, introduce yourself for the record, please.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I'm Olivia Feldman. I'm with Lightstar. Quick question. I feel like the best spot to stand is here, but I don't want to block the camera. Is this okay to stand?
You're fine there. You're fine there.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, hi, I'm Olivia Feldman, Lightstar. That's the development company. I'm representing the project. We've also got Emily here from Labella, who is our consulting company that does the civil engineering work as well as the environmental work. We've also got John Capella with us as an attorney, and we've got the landowners here as well, Georgia and Anastasia and their sons. So as a quick refresher, last summer we submitted an application for the site plan and the special permit approval. Since then, we've addressed multiple rounds of comments. We had the first public hearing back in February, and there were a good amount of comments from that. We took extensive notes during that meeting, and we have since provided a response to comments document to the town. So, as a result, we've got this response to comments document that I can go through now, and it addresses all of the topics, including our correspondence with the DEC, manufacturing information, waivers, tree clearing quantities, glare study, additional visual simulations we had conducted, as well as SWIP and stormwater concerns, some questions on noise and landscaping. So if I may, I'd like to kind of cover each of these topics and then talk about how we address them.
Please do.
Okay, so we kind of go through the document on a higher level. First up, we have the DEC correspondence. It was a question as to what the most recent correspondence had been, so we passed that back along as part of this letter. The word from the DEC is the application is capable of meeting permit issuance standards. It's our application for impacting within the 100-foot adjacent area of the wetland. They say, however, the application will remain incomplete until the provisions of seeker are satisfied, which, you know, we understand it's just part of the process. So we have a bit of a verbal consensus. The panel manufacturer, the question regarding that was about the location of it. And Thornova panels are the ones that we are proposing. We'll have to see how it goes at the time of procurement, which will hopefully be quite soon. But currently we're going with Thornova. They're manufactured in Vietnam, but they have a US headquarters in Fremont, California. They are set to begin manufacturing in the US in 2024. I'm not sure what month that is, but I'm hoping that at the time of procurement, we could pull the panels from manufactured within the US, but I cannot guarantee that at the time. Other things, there were some concerns about PFAS. I want to note that panels will be replaced promptly if they are broken by hail or anything else, a thrown rock or something, hopefully not. They will not release harmful amounts of hazardous materials, even if they are cracked, because they are laminated and they're sealed inside tempered glass, which is the same as used for car windshields and hurricane windows.
Just a clarification on that one.
Sure.
It says it won't release harmful amounts, it will release any amounts.
I don't believe so. I mean, you know, if there's an absolute meteor that comes down and shatters it, maybe there's a chance there could be a bit of dust that goes into the air.
Not
But
thinking about meteors. Just if you had a cracked,
if it's cracked,
Please,
no,
nothing
nothing
leach out.
is leaching out. It's similar to, you know, if you get a cracked windshield, it's, yes, you can see it's cracked, but it's got like a protective film on the inside. Similar concept here.
thank you.
These panels adhere to strict testing protocols and established by the EPA called the toxicity characteristic leaching procedure. And we make sure that the panels we're proposing adhere to that, which they do. And I double check. As for the relief waivers, we're asking for waivers pursuant to the code for 20% reduction in road setbacks as well as slope limitations. Overall, the layout is protective of the features that we have present on this site, which is the site we have to work with. And this is the best design that we can come up with for this piece of property. So we've had to, of course, account for the wetlands and the setbacks as they stand and the terrain as it stands, but we've done the best we can, and that's why we have to request these waivers. Overall, there are many positives about the site. It's got great connectivity to the grid. It has good capacity. We already have an interconnection agreement with Orange and Rockland. We have minimal tree clearing at this site, which is great. I have another site that's entirely forested, but this one is not, so good news there. There's also a lack of environmentally sensitive plants and animals, which is good news. And of course, willing landowners that we've been working with, and that's been going well. We've worked with Labella to maximize the usable area. We keep going back and forth on this and making sure we've got everything, you know, as good as it can be at the moment. So prior to requesting the relief of these waivers. And I also want to note the vast majority of slopes between the 15 and 18% slopes that we are requesting here are being avoided, but we do have to impact some of those slopes between 15 and 18%, but it's a very small amount relative to acreage-wise. Tree clearing quantities, there was a discrepancy in tree clearing quantities on the tree clearing plans that was brought up at the last meeting. The final number is 385 trees are proposed to be cleared. That's as minimal as we can get it here. And the discrepancy was because some trees were being double counted initially, but they are no longer. Two things with glare. The first is that there was a question about the height they were analyzed at, the panels, and they were modeled to an average of 8.5 feet. This is the average maximum panel height, and it does take the site's topography into account. They were modeled as a solid sheet of glass for the entire area where the panels are, which is very conservative because, as we know, there are gaps between rows, there are shadows, so this is a conservative estimate of glare. And if someone has questions specifically relating to that piece, Emily can speak to that a bit more as well. Also, in the original glare analysis, it was noted that there are some off-site obstructions that we were including in our analysis, and it was noted that we should remove these obstructions. It is standard practice to include some off-site obstructions, such as patches of trees, but it was noted at the last meeting that, you know, we don't have control of trees that aren't on our property. We can't guarantee that they will stay standing, so we went back, redid the glare analysis, and without the obstructions, and removing these obstructions did not increase the glare significantly. Again, we only have green glare in this area, which is the most minimal form of glare. There were requests for additional visual simulations to the north, the southwest, and the southeast, which we have done. The person from Labella that did it actually went out and took, how many, 18
locations, and I think he had at least 5 photos at each location.
So he went out and took a lot of photos, checked the entire community, many different roads around the surrounding area, and we ultimately narrowed it down to 3 view sheds that we wanted to show. 2 that are generally representative of the area, and 1 that is absolute worst case. Rather than show 3 that are representative, there was special concern to the north on Durland Road where the hill comes to a crest, so we made a point to show the worst case possible glare, or not glare, but visual simulation at that point.
And that did not include the proposed screening in the model.
Right,
So
yes.
that's just with what's out there existing for vegetation.
Right, and we can go into that more if there are further questions on that, but for now we'll skip over the other details there. There were questions about the SWIP and stormwater things. There were questions about the figure from the SWIP showing the panel installation on up to 10% slope. It was noted that we should show the installation of panels over 10% because we are proposing panel installation on over 10% slope in some areas. So we wanted to note that this figure comes from the Maryland Department of the Environment. That's what the DEC used as reference, and it's standard guidance, but the guidance is the same for slopes above 10%, with the exception of spacing of the energy dissipators. So we added detail in this response to comments document to discuss the proposed spacing that would be required above 10% slope. For stormwater in general, we want to note that erosion control measures will be required on the steepest slopes, including the use of rolled erosion control fabric. Also, we want to note a few other things. The DEC will only sign off on this site when we reach 80% vegetative cover. So it has to have some type of vegetation in the ground to help stabilize the soils at the steeper spots especially, but everywhere. Also, we are not impacting more than 5 acres of land at a time. And post-construction stormwater runoff is not allowed to exceed pre-construction stormwater runoff, which is standard, and we will adhere to that. And there will be no impacts to wells, I should note. As for impacts within the DEC wetland buffer, the impacts that we're proposing are within the 100-foot adjacent area of DEC wetland WR6, and we are avoiding all direct impacts to the wetland itself. These are just impacts to the adjacent areas. And these impacts are going to be a portion of the required earthwork, the pervious access roadways, and some of the solar arrays themselves. This impact totals to 0.29 acres, and again is just in the adjacent area, and DEC is fully aware of what we're proposing and where and how extensive the impacts will be. These disturbances were avoided as much as possible, but they are required to allow for a buildable project here. Now to the last page. It was noted that there might be potential for wetlands to shift over time, and I know that can be true over periods of time, 5 years or longer. So I think it's been 4 years since the original wetland delineation was done. We've been looking at this site for a while. So we had David McDougall, who is a professional wetland scientist, walk the site on February 8th, shortly after the first public hearing. We had him go out, take a look. He said there are no significant shifts to the wetlands at all. And then 2 more points. One about noise. There was a question about the noise level that will be emitted from the facility. The panels themselves don't produce noise, but the electrical equipment associated with them does. It can produce 25 to 50 decibels generally. Town code prohibits creation of any noise which exceeds 75 dBA at the adjoining property line. And our inverters are proposed no closer than 80 feet from the edge of all property lines, so our inverters at 80 feet away is comparable to 50 decibels is what you'd be hearing if you were walking right alongside the site. 50 decibels, for context, is similar to a quiet conversation or a quiet refrigerator. Oh, also, there will be no noise at night because this is only operational during the day. As far as the landscaping plan, landscaping has been added to these designs since our last meeting. We are proposing rows of a mixture of native species of evergreens. So we're proposing eastern red cedar, Norway spruce, and white spruce, and that's, if someone wants to come up and see closer, it's all these little dots that we show between the wetland and the panel areas. We've included a few appendices, including the DEC correspondence itself, those emails, the equipment specification data sheets for all of our equipment proposed, additional leaf-off visual simulations. We included the 3 that were done fully, and then the revised design set is included as well. And I have, we have a full copy of that in all the sheets. So this covers our responses on a general level. I'm happy to answer any specific questions. We've also got Emily here to help with that. And with that, I'd like to yield back to the boards for, to see if we have further public comment.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
The glare study says that the panels face south.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a little confused looking at the map.
Mm-hmm.
If north is where you're showing on your compass,
Yeah, north is
it looks
the
like they're facing east and west.
So these are tracker panels, so they're oriented in strings north to south.
Right, but when that whole string moves, the whole string moves together.
Yeah,
In
so
that,
it
along that
shifts
same axis.
like this way.
So
yeah.
it's facing east and it's facing west, it's facing east and it's facing west, am I
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
So
But the
that's
study
not
was,
south-facing.
was that?
So then it's not south-facing.
Right, that's what I'm trying to get a little clarity on.
At noon,
I-
it would be south facing.
I would have to look at the glare study for where you're talking about, where it references that, and the only thing I can think of is that was a typo, that it shouldn't be, I know, I redid the glare when we were looking at the to remove the obstructions. It's modeled as trackers north to south in the actual report from the program, so I would imagine that that's a typo. I can look into that for sure, and verify that, like tomorrow, but I don't, they are oriented east to west is for where the glass is, the rows go north to south.
And the glare study counts for the
Yes.
tracking.
Mm-hmm. It models it with the tracking.
So that should have been worded differently, but yeah.
Thank you.
I got a quick question.
Sure.
The noise level, I'm assuming all these panels have individual motors on them as
Mhm.
they track, right? Your decibel noise levels, is that with all of them, because they all track at the same time,
Well,
right?
there's not a motor for every panel,
There's not,
there's just
okay.
several throughout the whole string. Each table of panels, there will be just like several motors, like I don't know off the top of my head how many per this specific setup, but it's maybe 3 to 4 for that whole one each table.
Yeah, it
So-
depends on the
so
length.
whatever number of motors there are, is this study, the decibel study, including all of them operating at the same time?
Yeah, mhm. The amount of noise that those produce is less than what the equipment on the pads. The equipment on the pads is the most, the loudest, if you want to call it that. I mean, none of it's really very loud, because I think even when you're right next to the inverters, it was like just a hair above that amount of decibels. So it's very quiet.
So I'm assuming these are small, relatively small sized DC motors, right?
Yeah, I think they're like servo motor type.
Like a servo?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to.
Similar to what you have in like remote control car or something like that.
Yeah, they're relatively small. You wouldn't notice them specifically when you're looking at the racking. They just fit right in there.
Right, what you're gonna hear if you walk past the site is you're gonna hear the inverters.
They're gonna drown out the sound of, the DC motors don't have a lot of noise to them. I mean, it's only momentary because they move in increments. So it's not like you're running a motor for 5 minutes, you know, it's not like you're running a pump or something.
It's just for a few
It's gonna be
seconds.
drowned out by the sound of the inverters themselves.
Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this was less before you, as you indicated, at your February 1st meeting. At that time, this board and the town board opened the public hearing and received a number of comments from the public, and you had adjourned until this evening. I think what you were anticipating was a Part 3 EAF. The applicant, as they indicated, gave you a response to comments. Some of the responses do address some of the items that you would include in the EAF, but if it's all right with the board, I just want to touch on a couple what I consider important matters that you should consider as you go through that response to comments.
Sure.
So the applicant was asked to contact the DEC, and that was relative to the potential permitting of within the adjacent areas. As the board's aware, it's unusual for the DEC to permit within adjacent areas. But however, this is, this is solar, so they may have some exceptions. The applicant's response to comments indicates they have obtained preliminary approval from the DEC. As far as I'm aware, there's no such approval. And the applicant hasn't provided that. They provided some electronic correspondence from the DEC, but no approval. In terms of your concern relative to PFAS and contamination, the applicant indicated where the panels are made and that they may be able to procure panels made in the United States. They also said that they would let you know during construction where they're going to procure the panels from. Well, procedurally, that's problematic. They can't, once they start and get a building permit, they're not going to come back. So if, excuse me, if the board is interested in a particular manufacturer or particular location of manufacturer, that would need to be discussed as part of this process.
Is that something that could be put in the resolution?
Can I just have one comment to that? The procurement process and the final panels will be chosen before the building permit is approved.
But-
So that's part of, that would
But
be.
after the site plan is signed.
It's a matter of what is available at that time. I mean, you understand how construction works. I'm sure, you can't always guarantee that what you want to buy now, what they have on the shelf, more or less, is gonna be available. So the only reason why it would change from what we're proposing now is if for some reason they became unavailable in the quantity that's required, or if we were able to get them from the United States, because that's the preferred area to get them from. But we're not gonna change them after the building permit.
You can't.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's
What I
not.
would recommend is that if the applicant has a portfolio of projects or materials they want to use, they submit those now, and the board could approve those, and then they can select as they want. I just hesitate to, this is what we're using, but we may change it in the future. In terms of the hardship, the applicant correctly identified the hardship waiver requirements, and that's unnecessary and undue hardship, and the waiver accomplishes without significant environmental harm. But then they go into a discussion about the 5-factor test from the town law 267, which is a ZBA test, not applicable to this board. So I don't know if they're looking to change and go to the ZBA, or whether they're still seeking a waiver from this board. If that is still a waiver, then you're not concerned with the 5-factor test.
I can reply to that because your code uses words that have some legal connotation that were lifted from ZBA variance. So there is no test. Consider we gave you discussions regarding the environmental impacts and the, impact to the project if there were not to get the waivers that support a waiver. But since there was no test, we used something to analogize. The board can consider it. We're not saying you have to follow that test, but it's to give you some
So the board
basis to,
shouldn't
to
be following
consider
that
it.
test.
Yeah.
It's not a test that comes before you, but the information that's behind it, certainly consider. But I would say at this point, you can just disregard those references to that town law because it doesn't apply to you. But if that's the arguments that they want to use, community character, substantiality, things like that, they certainly can present that as a way to try and demonstrate that waiver.
And then the other thing, I think they would be fine with the portfolio, but if, environmental issues relate to the characteristics of a panel. So they had claimed that they would be EPA tested It would meet the glare requirements. So that is what would impact the environment, not necessarily the company that does the manufacturing. If you own a Honda or you own a Toyota, both of them have to meet the emission standards for, you know, cars that operate in New York State. Both of them have to meet New York State inspections, so those would be legitimate conditions to place on a thing. But to say that you need to use a Toyota or a Honda, if Honda is what is available, then doesn't seem to me to have any relationship to the actual review as it relates to zoning and as it relates to your code. But we certainly, if they have a portfolio, give it to you to ensure that whatever standards are important to you as it relates to glare, as it relates to noise, as it relates to the potential release of hazardous, those are certainly conditions I think that are relevant to say whatever you choose needs to meet these standards, and then we would provide them when you know it.
Mr. Chairman, we're not saying that you need to have a Toyota or a Honda. What we're just saying is whatever you review is part of your environmental review, and that could be multiple different types of panels. We just want that to carry through and be consistent for the building permit process, so the applicant doesn't have to return to this board for amended site
So
plan.
if they were to present, like you said, a portfolio of a couple different
Sure.
make and models,
Other applicants do that all the time.
it's like it's the idea of the or equal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple other quick items. Talked about, again, back on the hardship and the slopes. I think the response to comments indicates that there's 13 racking tables on slopes between 15 and 18%. There's also, on the new plans, it also shows panels over areas of 18% slope. It could be a typographical error, but I think it needs to be addressed, particularly on that northern array. Relative to the glare study, the applicants indicated they reproduced the glare study without those obstructions. However, it wasn't submitted, so I would suggest if you're going to rely on that, that you get a copy of that if you would. There was some discussion of the average maximum. I don't know what that term means, average maximum. Perhaps the applicant can provide a definition. On wetlands impacts, the table indicates 0.29 acres of adjacent area impact. I would define adjacent area impact as the area between the adjacent area and then the limit of disturbance. When I did a quick analysis today, I got almost 9 acres total. So I'd ask the applicant to provide you some sort of map that shows how they calculated that 0.29 acres. On the visual, the applicants indicated they'd taken 18 photographs and evaluated the site, and they've given you 3 photographs. I think you should see all 18.
We've provided more than 3. This was 3 additional on top of, I think we've already done 7.
Multiple, yeah.
So we're at the 10th, I believe, total.
So 7 and 18 is 25?
They're not, it's not a matter of taking a photo, and it takes time and effort to take the picture and then make the simulation. So asking for 15 more simulations is like over a month's worth of work. So that was the point of picking the 3 to show the worst case, and then the other 2 are representative of what the adjacent areas are.
Okay. Not to be argumentative, but I think that's the reason you defer the public hearing out for 2 months, so you can get a better understanding of the visual impact. If they've analyzed it from 18 different locations and 7 previously, and now you have 7 and 3, you have 10 of the 25. I think you should have all 25, even if it's just the raw photographs.
We can provide the raw photographs if that's helpful, but yeah, the additional analysis would be really extensive.
And the board may
Well, they
determine
may
that.
want that, but it's their determination,
Of course.
what's being said. So the board should get those raw photographs and determine if you
If
think,
that's adequate.
yeah. And then if you want the simulation from those locations to see the visual impact, you can ask that of the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have, unless the board has any questions.
Can I respond to 2 of your other comments real quick? Just for a
Please.
little clarifying. The comment about the SWIP, or not the SWIP, I'm sorry, the DEC not having an approval. We're not saying that they have any kind of official approval. The DEC's correspondence, which you guys have copies of, states that they cannot provide that until the secret process is completed. So there's no possible way to get any kind of like approval from them until you guys finish the secret process. But that's all they're saying, that's the only thing they're waiting on, is for you guys to go through the secret process. They're not.
The issue is that you called it a preliminary approval, and as your attorneys noted, there's certain terms that have certain connotations, so there is no preliminary approval. What you've done is you've provided the correspondence that we requested.
Right, so I just wanted to clarify, I apologize if we used the wrong terminology in the legal sense. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that they're not waiting on anything else from us or have any problem with anything else. They
I
just
think
want the
they
secret
understand.
process. Okay. And then you made a comment about the slopes. I know none of the panels are in the 18, over the 18%, and when you're, I'm not sure. I
I'd
don't
be
think-
happy to review it with you.
I'm just letting you know that we've looked at that, I don't know, every time we go through this iteration.
Yeah.
And when I say that there's 13 racks in those slope areas, it's not the entire rack. It's typically like maybe 1 to 2 posts. It's not the whole length of the rack that's in there.
Yeah, the 13 isn't the issue. The issue is the plan actually shows development on 18% slopes, which is fine. You can proceed with that. You just need a variance.
I apologize if that's shown somewhere. I know we were just in it the other day, and I don't know if it got something printed strange, but we're not proposing that. And if there is an area, that we would address that.
Okay, that's fine.
Just check your overlays. Comments from the board?
I just have one comment. You mentioned 385 trees is the correct amount that's being removed. Do you have an amount that you're replanting?
Yes.
Not off the top of our head, but we can definitely calculate that based on the length of our areas that we're proposing plantings. And I don't know if it'd be 300 and like a 1-for-1 replacement, but there is a significant amount of trees being planted, and we can get that number, or the official number, to you if that's something you'd like to know.
We would want to know.
Yeah.
Sure. But would that be on any of the plans?
So it's a public
This isn't
hearing, the board would like to see, and then the town.
Yes.
So, I have to actually take a measurement.
I think there's gonna be a lot of that clarification once it's my turn.
Could I have a motion to open the public, or reopen the public hearing in the planning board?
Town board go first?
Just open, and then they can open. That's okay.
Would you like to do it now?
No, I just thought they should be able to talk before, maybe they had to come and, let the public hear first.
Go ahead.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Jeremy, second by?
I'll say.
Seamus, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
We reopening also?
Yes, if
You
you
will be
can
opening
open
as well.
I have a motion to reopen the public hearing for the SR 94 solar.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing is open. For anybody from the public that wishes to speak, what I would ask you to do is just introduce yourself and your address for the record. Perhaps a hand in the air, one at a time. Let us know what your concerns are, or thoughts or comments, and we'll move on to the next individual once you complete.
Yeah. it's okay.
I have an extra mic there, Sean.
You pass it through the audience.
My name's John Russo. I live at 4377 Route 94. Again, as I stated the last time in the meeting, I'm not against the solar project, but I do have some concerns. On the map, if I could just go up there. My main concern is not so much this area here, it's this area. My property line runs right up against this. And we're really just, we're very concerned, and we're requesting that the board does not they abide by the town codes, and they do not grant the setback for waiver. The way they're showing this right now, most of the 385 trees are being taken out right behind us. They're opening up the entire section, and with the new plan here, the landscape mitigation, it's showing trees around the fencing, but it shows nothing along the property
So you
put
something there.
So, what we're basically requesting is that they keep the 100-foot property setback, they keep that and remain that as woods, and do a landscape mitigation along that line. So that's pretty much what we're requesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question? Where's your house?
Right there.
No, that's not his house. The one's further in.
I know where I live.
Yeah. I know.
Can I just
Okay,
ask
one person at a time.
We'll
Please.
locate the house at a future time.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to pass the mic forward to.
I don't need the mic, I can speak a little loud.
Okay. Speak loudly.
They're not gonna hear you on TV, you need the mic. Oh. My name is George Macretius. I'm the owner of the farm. I hear over here that's a lot of noise, reflection, and everything else, and materials. Across from my farm is an industry that makes firewood. It's a huge diesel engine with a 30 inches of circular saw. When they chopping that wood, not half a mile, about a mile you can hear it from far away. The second thing is, next to it, there is a mechanical shop. When they use that compressor, and they take the bolts, it's screaming all the way. It doesn't matter, I can stop progress. I approved of that in there. The trees that Mr. Russo says in there, if you look on this side, of his side, he chopped them, all of them down. He left 1 or 2, 3. Meanwhile, I didn't chop them because I had no need for them. I only chop when something falls down and chop it for firewood. I could have taken them all if I wanted. No, I like to beat the trees in there. But if he wants a buffer zone, he can put at least 50 feet of his own trees. I'm as a good neighbor, I allow him to roam around during the time with snowmobiles, with everything. And one time, he expressed his concern that we're using Roundup 39, because me and the farmer are using to grow corn. I said I'm against it. I like to be all natural. I grew sheep, and I stopped the farm. But now the sheep didn't make any money, so I discontinued. Now me and the farmer, we use Roundup 39 up to that point. Mr. Russo has 7 wells. That thing is going to go down to his wells. But putting these panels in there, there won't be no chemicals. So it's a plus for him. It's a plus for the town. It's a win-win situation. The town will get taxes. The people that the local hardware stores, they will make money from me because I'm going to get some money, and I'm going to rebuild all these barns. That's in 1940 that Mr. Dorland had for his cows. They're ready to fall apart. That costs money. I don't have the money, I'm retired. But if I get some money, I'll do that. So Lowe's is going to benefit, the lumberyard is going to benefit, the town is going to benefit. So many makes will be done, so the guy can run his compressor. It's a win-win situation. I don't see anything wrong with that. I have a neighbor about 100 feet from me, and another neighbor, and there are 3 more neighbors. I have no problem with this. So I don't see what's the problem. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take the mic.
In the back?
Excuse me, no, I think I managed to. I'm trying, no.
We want to make sure
He
the
has to.
system picks up the voice.
Yeah, it's not gonna pick up your comments, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is John Russo. I'm at 4381 Route 94, Goshen, next door to my sons. I've been there since 1960. some of the parts of the story. I respect his interpretation of it, but it's far different than I recall and remember. I do remember him having the sheep, which by the way, I love wildlife and livestock. Excuse me. And I had to help him catch it most of the time because there were very few fences there. But that was fine. I was concerned about them getting hit on the highway. That's not what I'm here about. I'm here to talk about the fact that rules and regulations are established for a purpose. I don't need to remind you of that. You know that. And once you start breaking the rules and making modifications or waivers, you lose control of it. And then how do you stop the next guy from asking for something more? I'm asking for you to respect and not go along with the waivers. That will not hurt his program. It may cut down on a couple of his panels, but that's about it. I'm also concerned about the project, or excuse me, the manufacturer being in Vietnam. If anyone knows anything about chemicals and food colorings and food flavors and things like that, know that the sum is not equal to the parts, in the sense that there's grass lists, what's called grass lists, are generally regarded as safe. The reason they may be manufactured in Vietnam is because the California headquarters, as you pointed out, does not have the grass list generally regarded as safe to manufacture in the United States at this point. The finished product may be safe as long as it isn't harmed or broken or busted, but the product itself, the parts going into that product, may not be on the grass list in the United States. So that's a concern of mine too, because I don't know really where that is. But I just also want to go just one more time that the waivers protect us, the health and safety of the people around them. It protects and it does not allow you to infringe on the buffer areas that we were concerned about. The aquifer that is established there in the really swamp area that's still there. There was a concern about the swamp area not being a wetland. I think it was identified that it is a wetland, number one. And number two, I can tell you how many times I was out there helping this gentleman get his tractor out, push it out, or haul it out. Every time he tried to mow, that he would get buried in the mud. And he made a statement that it was not a wetlands. I find that hard to believe. Again, I want to be a good neighbor. I think we can be good neighbors, but I am concerned about infringing and pushing the limits that we're doing that's going to infringe upon the health and safety of my family that's been there long and established. Thank you very much for all of your time and effort, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Other comments from the board? From your board, town board? Yep, Doug?
The manufacturer of these panels, have you shopped around and looked at all the varieties and the durability, et cetera, all these different companies, and you think this is one that's comparable to get the top?
Yes. Yep, this company has a great reputation in the industry. It's one of the top panel manufacturer companies that solar developers work with. The decision itself is made by our engineering, procurement, and construction team. So I could get more information from them if you'd like about how they whittled it down, but I know they highly recommended this company. And again, it does have capabilities to begin manufacturing in the US quite soon, potentially within 2024. It says within 2024 on their site, so.
It's a matter of getting the plant up and running, not regulations that says that they can't be made in the United States.
Yep, it's just a matter of getting up and running. And if I may, sorry, are you done with your comment?
Well, my concern is the PFOAs and PFOS. And,
okay.
And I think that's the gentleman back here talking about too. You got people living around here. It's got to be beyond reproach. Those they'll be safe. And
you can't import, like legally you can't import the materials that are unsafe, like certain things that are manufactured in other countries, you legally can't even obtain them. And even the materials sometimes come from other countries. They are not even eligible to use those materials when they're manufacturing them in, say, Vietnam or Japan or somewhere similar, and then be sold to the United States. So they do go through a rigorous testing procedure to get them to be sold here. So this isn't like any different than, say, buying an iPhone or a new Samsung phone. They have similar chemicals in them. Everybody walks around with those in their pockets, and it's the same concept. They're glass. If you crack those, you know, it's the stuff that's dangerous is sealed, as Olivia said. If a meteor hits the site, I don't know if we can guarantee that nothing would get out of there, but if a large piece of hail or a rock or something else damages the glass, even like shatters it almost, you know.
Yeah, even if someone were to throw
it stays intact inside.
Let me ask you two questions. First off, have these panels been used anywhere else in the state? Any projects that your company's worked for?
I believe so. I'd have to double check, but we have a few sites that are entering the construction phase, and they have Thornova panels proposed, and they've been approved.
If we can get a list of those.
A list of the projects?
The projects and the locations.
Sure.
The other question, from other solar projects we've looked at, consultants have indicated they don't run right out when one panel breaks. You know, when enough of them break, or there's a problem, then they come out and do any number of them. You know, because it's not changing the output of the field substantially. So they don't run out each time the panel is broken.
I think it depends on what type of part of the panel is broken, because there's different parts, like the electrical connectivity to the system might have an issue, and if that one panel goes down, that's not gonna make or break your system. But if there's like a safety concern, that's something that would be addressed right away without waiting for an accumulation of other damages.
Okay, now how would you know if a panel, the glass face is broken? How often do you intend or have somebody inspecting the fields?
Well, you can tell if there's an outage just based on the reduced output. We have remote monitoring facilities.
So you're looking at each individual panel as opposed to what that string does or that inverter is putting out?
It might be more string or inverter based, but if we see a drop, we can have someone go out and take a look at the site right away.
And it does whittle down to small groups of panels. I think they're groups of 22. So you'd be able to determine with the remote monitoring software where in the site, with like which group of 22 has the issue. You might not know that like panel 13 out of 22 has the issue.
But if one or two panels were to go down out of those 22, you'd see that?
Yes.
Would a crack make a panel go down?
One crack?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm not sure, but I just know that there's solid monitoring, and I think there's a way to tell if a panel has been cracked in any way. So we would have that data and we could go out and check. I'm not sure exactly what that software would be, but there's a way to know if a panel's been damaged, definitely.
But if you have multiple panels that crack and doesn't show any, reduction in creating energy, you would know.
I think it would stop working if it was cracked. Just as a matter of safety.
And the damage,
Yeah,
like
we'll go
when panels have damage to them, typically they don't usually crack. It's usually like a connectivity issue with the wiring that has an issue. In my experience, anyways, they're pretty sturdy, and they're usually away from like roads to the point that trucks aren't going to be kicking rocks at them. So it's a more rare occurrence for that to be a problem.
Are you going to be maintaining and owning the field, or is it being sold off once constructed?
No, that's something that I really like about Lightstar as a company, is we maintain, own, and operate throughout the lifespan of it. We're not out here trying to sell projects to make a quick buck. It's not about that. It's about like making sure we have something that benefits the environment and also the community as a whole.
Is this a community solar, or is
Yes.
it the people, customers of Orange and Rockland can buy shares or buy kilowatts?
Yeah, there's a subscriber program that you can sign up for.
Other questions or comments?
I guess I'd just make one point. Within the answers that you read from earlier, there was, some discussion about the Derwin perspective.
Right.
And that there were challenges about screening it in a way that might be more robust. I think we're probably expecting you to overcome those challenges.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's,
The answer wasn't super, didn't give us a whole lot of confidence on that front.
it didn't give you confidence.
Yes, you identified the challenges in screening, without committing to the solution of screening.
Oh, yes, we are
Yeah,
committing.
this is screening the view shed from Derland as over here. So it is encased and well beyond the Derland direct line of sight. So, like I mentioned, the trees that we're proposing were not modeled in the visual simulation, so it's sort of like absolute worst, like what's out there now is kind of a little scrubby, you know? But we're, the three species of trees, and if there's some other species, you know, that wants to, we're definitely open to discussion on what the town wants there, but that's what this is to screen from.
So we show the view shed from the highest point on Derland Road, which is the road itself, which is where the worst viewpoint is. And it shows it without any proposed screening that we are promising to add in. So it's this really, really worst case, we swear.
Yeah. Okay.
Sean, did you have anything else?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Neil?
Okay, good. On the DEC buffer, I understand that they're gonna give you permission for the panels, and I'm okay with that. My concern is just that whether you're gonna exceed that by, usually we see a perimeter road around there. And my question is, are you gonna have a perimeter road for servicing later on, or is that not gonna be allowed by the DEC?
There are 2 permanent access roads. Well, and when we say permanent, the lifespan of the solar facility is only 25 to 35 years. So this could all be decommissioned and gone in 40 years if we want it to be. But when we say permanent, we mean for the lifespan of the solar facility, you would have these 2 access roads here. Around, there would be no other proposed access roads within the solar.
Okay, so you're talking about a
There is
pervious.
space, like a buffer between the fence and the panels, that if a vehicle needs to get through there, be it emergency services or an equipment truck, there's space to have that traversing edge.
So-
And we've checked since the last meeting, we've gone and made sure that there is definitely space for a truck to get in where it needs to go.
Okay, I think that usually is, but the question is the DEC going to allow you to use that later on for service trucks?
For service trucks?
Yeah, if you got the service panels later on, is the DEC saying, yes, you can go in that buffer area there? Or are you just saying we're gonna do that?
I mean, we can't go in and impact the soil, but DEC has seen the plans as they are, and they've, we can't say they've approved it, but
No.
they've given indication that they might.
They didn't have comments in regards to what's in the buffer.
Okay, I just want to confirm, when we approve it, that we know, yes, you're gonna be allowed to use that buffer for service, or no, you can't, and I just would love to have that delineated.
I believe so, but we can confirm that with the DEC.
Okay, thank you. I didn't understand the DEC 80% coverage. I know an 80% number, I understand all that, it's stormwater. Why is the DEC involved with that instead of the town?
Are you guys in MS4? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I should. So you would definitely be involved with that. You would have to sign off of the SWIP along with the DEC to send in the notice of termination.
Right.
So the 80%, it's worded kind of funky. So 100% of the area that's been disturbed needs to have 80% or better vegetation grown on it. So the DEC and obviously you guys would also be involved with the closeout of the
Okay,
project.
no, I was just wondering why it's the DEC, otherwise being an MS4, I would have thought it was us, but maybe there's something special going on, I didn't understand.
Yeah, I
No,
don't
it's-
think, Neil, the DEC has to sign off because it's a general permit. It would go through the stormwater, town stormwater management officer. It would go to the town supervisor to sign the determination. The applicant would then submit that to the DEC, and then they would no longer be covered. There's no real sign off. The DEC usually does not come out also follows.
That's why I thought it would be, but. I like the spacing for the erosion. I like those plans. I wish we'd see them in all the solar panels, solar projects. The other big concern I have is some of the screening around the neighbor's house. And I don't know if you can leave some more trees there or do some more robust screening there. That's the other spot, the biggest concern I have is for the neighbor's property. And yes, I understand we could have left trees there. However, this is the project and this project is on your property. And therefore, I think you're more responsible for that.
Right, it's tough because, you know, we only control up to our parcel boundary, and what he does with his land is up.
I understand that.
Of course.
So we're talking about what you can do on your parcel boundary.
Right.
And I think you have to be a little bit more robust with screening as it relates to that house.
We did take a look at John Russo's concerns, and we took a look at how the panels are placed near his property. They are completely set back 80 feet from the property lines.
They're 100 feet, the fence is at 80 feet.
Right.
So the panels are actually within the 100-foot setback as it stands. So it's just the fence and the roads that are in the variance, or the waiver request zone.
It's tough because we have this big old wetland to contend with in the middle here. So, and we, you know, it is an option, it was an option at the beginning for us to consider proposing impact to the entire wetland and proposing it that way. But instead of that, for sake of the environment, for sake of the community, we wanted to leave this wetland. Because of, you know, wetlands have of course many wonderful purposes and functions in the natural world. So we wanted to preserve that to the extent we can. That means that we are completely tying ourselves off to these small areas. And the access road has to be where it is. Unfortunately, there will be no well impacts. The access road will be gravel. And yeah, we can't, again, we don't have any control of anything beyond this line. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. During construction, there's going to be a very limited amount of trucks coming in. It's a relatively small area, and it's, during construction, you're going to see the most traffic, but aside from that, it's going to be a really quiet road, quieter than a residential property. And that's...
And then all the tree clearing is not all over here. There's also a larger section over there, so it's spread throughout the site.
I did know
I think
that.
what you're hearing is the planning board understands your position, but they want to see more, so maybe at the next submission, put some screening.
Where you can control it, and between your project and your property line, I think you can do some more robust.
What would be the impact of reducing the number of panels along that property line, scaling back the strings, even a panel or two on each?
Well, panels need to be in a certain number of per string.
I mean, you're looking at some strings, I'm looking at the right side, it looks like there might be 2 or 3 on a string, and in the middle of it, you've got a couple dozen.
I'm sorry, we don't have the full outside our parcels. The house in question is up closer to the road. Am I correct in that?
I think so.
Because the issue with that though is where the road is what's got to be close to the property line, and that is to stay out of the wetlands is why the road is there. So directly where the road is, that's pretty much the only place that could be. Down here where we're clearing where the panels are, we can definitely take a look at that, but out here to stay out of the wetlands.
I'm not sure the road is the issue, as opposed to the fencing and the panels, if I understand.
Well, I thought the clearing was the issue, and the clearing that would be near the house if the house is up.
But if everything was pulled back a little bit, there'd be more opportunity to put a more, the term used, a robust buffer zone, buffer of trees in that portion on the.
There's not space though
northeast side.
to stay out of the wetland with the road. So this has to be up here.
Right,
so
I'm not
that clearing
talking about the
would have
road, the panels themselves.
So I think just go back, sharpen your pencils, and try and put some there.
Yes, like I was
We're
just saying, we can
gonna
definitely
come
take
back
a look
with
in the
that
section
blown
down
out
here for sure.
with something that we can show you and present to the board. This discussion
We'll do
is, you
it.
need to see it, and
Yeah.
this map does not show it.
So I'm a little confused. You said that the panels and the fencing are within the setback or not, or are outside of the setback area, so they are.
The panels are set at the 100-foot standard setback.
The panels
The
are.
fencing and some of the, equipment, like the equipment pad, I think might extend into that, and then access road.
So which is further to the north of the panels?
Yeah, and the same thing for the other side.
Closer
That goes
to
for
the house.
the whole setup. So the panels themselves are all within the 100-foot setback for the whole project.
And now for the board, I just want to understand this, and for maybe Kelly, somebody who knows the code verbatim. What would stop the current owner, that gentleman that spoke earlier, from going there and clearing out all those trees now before this project even?
He needs a clearing grading permit likely.
Depending on, so what would the limits of clearing be before it triggers a clearing permit?
Is that 5?
6 trees to an acre.
There you go.
I'm sorry?
6 trees to an acre.
Unless it's a working farm.
Right, I guess
Unless
it-
it's a working farm, which I
You are
take
correct.
it this is, so.
Which it is.
The
And
answer is.
that's
a good
my question.
Like, he
So-
has the ability to use his property in certain ways. However, this project is before you, so you're reviewing this project, and if you want to ask for this more robust screening, you have the ability to do so, and then it no longer qualifies.
Gio, you'll recall your code actually has, it authorizes you to a 1-to-1 ratio of tree replacement.
Correct, no, I get it. I get
And I
that.
think that's why
I'm just
some
trying
of the board
to,
asked
I'm
about
trying
how
to,
many
and you guys love when I say this, I'm trying to wrap my brain around all these things. And, you know, there's trees there on this gentleman's property that may not be there tomorrow, right? And, you know, and that's completely regardless of the screening that we're gonna request on that property line, right? That has nothing to do with it, so it could be here today and gone tomorrow. And, you know, it is an individual property owner. And, you know, most of our view shed analysis is done from public areas, not private property.
All of it should be.
All of it is.
received.
Right?
Yes.
So that's why I'm a little confused at the direction we're heading, screening somebody's private property. I'm having a little trouble, I'm grappling with that whole concept, so, you know, I just, in fairness to the applicant, you know,
Yeah, no,
the
it's a
adjacent
point
property
that
owners
was-
can shield their own view, right?
They certainly can,
Okay,
and
that's-
you're required to look at it from a public view shed. I
Right.
think the comment just came because it was a public comment that was received, and you're
I
trying to
got
see
you.
if there's.
No,
anything
and I'm
that
just
can be
trying to
done.
understand it all. I'm trying to ingest it all and wrap my brain around it, so. thank
But
you.
I think they said,
Appreciate it.
Mr. Capello said that they would be taking a look, and whatever their next submission is, they'll identify where that house actually is, so that the board has a better understanding.
I
And then
just
you
want to
can
be
see-
careful that we're not, as a board,
Right.
being capricious or arbitrary in asking an applicant
We're not gonna let you do that.
to shed a viewpoint from a private property.
I understand.
That's, I don't want to get into that realm.
We do have a couple more comments from the public. Where's the mic?
Oh, it's right here. Oh, you're getting your stats, can I try my Fitbit?
I have a question for you, or can I show you on the picture?
Step up to a chair.
This section here, you call a wetland. Are you aware that the town is taking all the water from the hill? It has two pipes, one that comes right here, buried, you cannot see it with gravel over, and one on this side, accumulates water constantly. And that land is all clay, nothing seeps down, it stays there. If you go by the rain, you're gonna have 3-4 inches of water. I cannot go there. Why is the town doesn't get the pipe to put it right in the stream, on this side and this side? When the owner was here before me, he had put channels in here. But over the years, they had been filled on, and the water stays there. It's not wetland. It's the town that makes it wetland.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to address it.
Please.
So, I think the applicant's talking about runoff from the state highway, that's State Route 94, as you know. And also wetland that was identified by your consultants as a wetland.
Yes, because there's water now there.
It's your consultants.
Yeah,
on their
it's
plans
coming
say it's a
from
wetland.
the hill
The town hasn't said
and
it's a
from the
wetland.
town.
You're not helping.
I know, but the thing is, they make it there. And then the trees that are over there is about 50 feet high. If you leave those trees in there, they're gonna dump and they break all the panels.
Can I add a comment about that? Yeah, so it is a wetland classified by the state, by the DEC, so it does meet the 3 functions required of wetlands. But that does kind of make a point as to how valuable wetlands are and that they can absorb massive amounts of water and runoff, and that's why it's important to protect them. And we've chosen a site design here that's really works in congruence with that feature. And it is important, even if it might not be valuable agricultural land, it is still important to the environment.
As you should. We had another question in the back? Someone had a comment?
I want to go back to the panels a little bit. I think that John's probably right, or Mr. Fellow's probably right. I think we should be able to find out what standards there are, and I don't know anything about panels that, I'd say, doesn't comply with UL or something like that, but there must be some standards out there that we can agree, if the panels meet those standards, then those panels would be acceptable. Because I don't know how to say word equivalent, because I don't know what equivalent is to compare it against.
Yep, we can help with that information and provide other good examples of panels, and we can highlight all the certifications and the standards that they meet if that's preferred.
From my point of view, that would help.
Sure.
Any other comments? From the board?
I actually just have one question.
Again, your name and address.
Mark Pachevsky, 36 Rolling Ridge Drive, Goshen. Doesn't really have much to do. You talk about the decommissioning or the lifespan of these solar fields. What happens? Is there a plan? Is it built into their permitting, the contract or whatever with the town that, okay, you're done, they take it out and it's restored?
They file a decommissioning plan right up front. That's something they've submitted, as part of the application package.
Good.
And that explains what gets done, how it gets done, and who does it.
Also a bond, right? There's a bond.
And there's a bond as well to ensure that it's done properly, and by then, if not, the town would do it with that money that was set aside in the bond.
Great.
Thank you. There's no other comments. Would you like to close your?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
No. What am I missing?
So you have asked the applicant to provide an expanded part 3. As you heard earlier, they provided a response to the comments that were received, but the board is still looking for an expanded part 3.
Okay, so we have to hold it open.
You don't have to, but based on the discussions held tonight, I think it would be beneficial. But I think we need to ask the applicant how long it's gonna take, because they have some of the information they need to go through the part 2 and put together in the part 3. I don't know how long that's gonna take. And then we can discuss what day to adjourn it to. Did you know how long?
Can I ask, did you want the applicant to do the part 2, or have you done a part 2?
We did a part 2, it was
Part 3.
adopted, I can send it to you.
Okay.
So we have provided a part 3 in response to the initial part 2 that we received. So we have this response to comments document. Are you saying that you would like this appended to that part 3, and then also expand on that to add to about the new comments that we would be addressing?
So I'm gonna look to your attorney.
We'll do part 3.
Okay.
Another part 3?
We need to do a real part 3. We'll submit it.
Not just this part.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add one thing on the part 3, just for clarification.
Sure, sure.
The response includes some items, let's say, for example, for noise, right? So the board had some question about noise. Noise is something you evaluate under seeker that would be evaluated under the part 3. There are some statements in there about the noise analysis, but you need to back up to that. So they may have performed an analysis. You need to see that analysis so you can confirm their numbers and evaluate the compliance. So that should also be provided.
And do you know how long that would take to prepare?
We're just trying to figure that out now. I'm not sure the length of time this would take.
It's not really a matter of the length, the time it takes to do it versus how fast can we get it on our noise consultant schedule. So I'd have to inquire about that and see how fast we can get it out here.
Okay, so then what if we adjourned it for 2 months? You have to get it in at least 2 weeks in advance. If that's not enough time, we can adjourn it? That way he.
I'd have an answer to this within a couple business days.
We have to adjourn it to a date certain.
Yes, can you adjourn it to 2 months?
Okay, so for the town board, that would be adjourning it to June 6th. It's a planning board meeting night. Is that okay with you?
Yep.
Then can you make a motion to schedule a special meeting for June 6th?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
So, done, okay. And then a motion to adjourn this public hearing to June 6th.
Motion to adjourn till June 6th?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And if you could adjourn it to June 6th.
I'd like a motion to adjourn this public hearing to June 6, 2024 as well.
So moved.
Seamus, second by? Marty? Eric, I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
The application deadline for June 6th is May 23rd at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Is it in the interim, if there was necessity as we're going through this, would it be possible to get on for a work session and maybe sit down with
If the board's okay with that.
What?
If the board's okay with the consultants having a conversation with the applicant outside of the meeting, it's up to them.
Sure. That'll be fine.
All right. So just give us a call if you need anything.
Appreciate your time.
Have a good night.
And if you guys have nothing further, you can make a motion to close your meeting.
We can?
Yeah, wait, do you have anything else on the agenda?
No?
Nope.
Nope, okay, then, yeah.
Motion to close. Need a second?
Second.
Rick.
All in favor?
Aye.
You guys get to stick around.
Thank you.
I am being optimistic today. I also haven't slept in like 3 days. But I did catch that you looked right there. And you said Marty. I was like, oh, Marty.
It's like two old R guys, like, you know.
I get it.
But we do look.
Deeply hurt.
You should be like all in the
Exactly the same.
How are you?
Fine. No. Remember, you're on YouTube.
Yes. Okay. Next item on the agenda, Hughes Energy Research, Development and Demonstration Facility, 16-1-1.13. It's an application for a site plan and special permit for research, development, and demonstration facility on 207.9 plus or minus acres in an AI zone, AQ3 floodplain ponding and stream corridor reservoir watershed overlays. And we're here tonight to continue the secret process. And welcome.
Mark Molsquad representing Hughes.
Kelly.
Mr. Millspaw provided the board with an expanded part 3 for your review. Since you came to me first, I'm just going to give a couple of comments and then I'll give it to Sean. A couple of corrections that should be made when the next question is that the correct zoning district is AI, not IA. Then also groundwater, there's a statement in your groundwater section. I know I usually don't weigh in on it, but it did say about the town is expanding its public water supply. The town is not expanding its public water supply. It's something that's being explored by the town, but it's not related to this project, so that really shouldn't be in this EAF. The plans, I believe, the bathrooms for this facility are like a porta potty outside, and I could have missed it, but I think it should be on the plans if it's not already.
It shows one little square.
Little square, I wasn't sure if that's what it was, so maybe that can be spelled out. And then the other part was that the EAF Part 3 did not address 3 items that were from your Part 2, and that would be energy, and then the answers for 16G or 16I. And with that, I will turn it over to Sean.
So as I typically do when you get an expanded part 3, I kind of go through it and I just give a summary of what the applicant's response was and whether there are any other follow-up kind of questions. And that's what I did in this case. In addition to the items that Kelly had, I was really, just in a very general sense, I was really just looking for some more information for this board in terms of the process, not just what they're doing, I think you've heard a lot about that, but how the material comes in, how it's offloaded, how it's handled, how any excess goes into the truck outside, is there potential for spill, is there chemical addition? Just some more information on that, or is there any outside storage? And I think Mr. Millsaw's ready to talk about that. He received my comments, acknowledged them in an email before the meeting, but I just wanted to mention that and see if the board had any initial questions for me at this point.
I do have a question for Kelly.
Yes.
Okay. Just in terms of process, this EAF, is this just for use or is this for use and the local?
This is also for the local law, yes.
Okay.
The planning board is the lead agency
Okay,
for
because
this
sometimes those are both
application
different.
as a whole.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mark?
Mark, would you like to respond?
Yes, Kelly, starting with your comment about impact on energy.
Yes.
Everything was marked
Everything was marked no, but the main question was marked yes, so you do have to respond to that.
So it will demand electricity for this steam generator during the operating shift of 12 hours a day. But there's no other power consumption, there's no fossil fuel. So it's described in the application documents. I believe in the part 1, we identified a kilowatt hour demand.
Okay, if that's the case, then I say just bring it forward and put it in an amended part 3.
And I have Sean's memo, and Sean, I did share with you some thoughts that I can summarize tonight, if that's okay.
Yeah, generally, when I prepare a memo for any application, not just this application, it's my recommendations to the board. I don't think that it really helps process if there's like one-on-one with consultants outside the meeting, so I think it'd be best, yes, if you go through what you're proposing with the board.
So, Sean, in his capacity as planning board engineer, commented with respect to impacts on land that the board, this board may want to consider other controls for these types of facilities. I believe this comment goes more to the local law than it does to the RD&D facility. Am I correct there?
That is correct, that you've heard, that's part of this secret review.
So, Sean said, Sean recommends that the expanded Part 3 evaluate potential mitigation measures, including location along state highways, dimensional setbacks, minimum lot sizes, and restrictions on proximity to residential land uses and residential zoning districts. My response is the applicant concurs, and we point out that your code has got many dimensional setbacks and lot size requirements at this time that apply to this zoning district. I'll add that you also have the ability to set conditions in your special permitting process. I don't have any particular recommendations in this regard. I would acquiesce to whatever the planning board decides is appropriate. But for the RD&D facility, I don't think anything is required because it's small, it's limited duration, and it's way in the back of the Orange County property.
When we say limited duration, what are we talking about?
So we had a pre-application conference with the DEC. The RD&D section of their regulations, they can issue permits for 12 months and renew them for up to 3 times for 12 months. There was a discussion with the DEC as to when the first 12-month period starts. Does it start upon DEC's issuance of a permit, which it's going to take us 6 to 12 months to build the facility. There's lead time issues on the equipment. Purchase orders have to be entered into, deposits have to be made. DEC recognized that and agreed that a 6 to 12-month period for delivery of and installation of equipment would be appropriate. And then there'd be a 12-month operating program that, geez, if everything goes well, we'd be done in 12 months. If the test results start pointing that we want to develop information in one area or another, we may request that the DEC extend it for another 12 months.
Thank you.
The next category is impact on surface water. Sean recommends to the planning board that the applicant identify the relevant requirements for consideration and acknowledge that compliance with Part 360 will be regulated by DEC. The RD&D project requires a permit from the DEC, and that permit has to meet standards incorporated in other sections of Part 360. Specifically, 360.8 contains specific prohibited siting applicable to all solid waste management facilities. These are siting constraints regarding aquifers, setbacks from surface waters, etc. 360.9 also sets forth various prohibited activities. In the construct of Part 360, the receiving, handling, and processing of regulated waste has to happen indoors. And that's the plan here, and that's what's necessary to get the state permit. Outdoor handling and storage is specifically not allowed, and the permit will be based on a facility layout that identifies the indoor tipping floor, unloading area, processing area, et cetera. If that's a adequate enough response.
Could I have a question on that?
Yep.
Actually, two questions. One from before. I couldn't tell from your site plan the distance of the project site to the property line. The property line along the Wallkill River is on the landfill side of the Wallkill River. So I just wondered, I don't see.
I could scale it off the drawing. I know that to the rear of the building, to the landfill property line, there's a property line in between, because this property was subdivided as part of the remedy for the Orange County landfill, and the landfill property is in an environmental easement, which is, there's 165 feet between this building and the landfill property line. It's a greater distance to the river.
If you can get that, just if it's bigger than fine. The second question is, if everything has to be done indoors, and that when I look at the site plan for the building, it seems to be that there's 20 feet inside the door is the end of the tipping floor, and I would think that most trucks are going to exceed 20 feet. So how is that inside, or is that inside for the DEC?
This is a small-scale operation. We're not going to be receiving conventional garbage trucks that would require more floor space. The materials are going to be delivered in smaller container trucks, like dumpster trucks, small roll-up container trucks, that sort of thing. The front of the truck doesn't have to be in the building. The dumping end of it needs to be under the roof and within the four walls of the building.
So the container has to be shorter than 20 feet then?
Right. Well, the dumping end of it. In other words, if it's...
So what you're saying is that basically the truck can be outside as long as it dumps it in the building?
That's correct.
Okay.
Under surface water, Sean had the additional comment that we recommend the applicant verify all material handling will occur indoors. I just spoke to that. The applicant describes any interior washdown procedures and confirmed that discharges from any floor drains are collected prior to discharge to the Wallkill River. I want to be clear, there's no discharge to the Wallkill River from this site.
Where do the floor drains discharge to?
To my knowledge, there are no floor drains, and to the extent that if there are any in the building, we'll cap them. It's not intended to have any discharge from the building at all.
So the old methane pipes, I guess, came through the floor, and those have been capped too?
So the methane header appears to be along the side of the building. That's where they had the fans and the blowers. And that was for handling landfill gas, not for managing water.
No, I just, if there's a hole in the floor, it still has to be capped.
Right. The applicant should advise whether fiber feedstock is evaluated on-site or off-site and identify any proposed handling and storage areas. I believe the storage areas are called out on the drawing, and it's our intent to produce fiber for delivery to the offtake partners for their evaluation of the material. They'll evaluate the material in their own laboratory for physical and chemical properties, and we'll probably do some trial runs making products out of the material within their whatever their product line is. One offtake partner, for example, makes like cafeteria trays and packing material like you get in an Amazon box. And in the building, as we make the fiber, we'll probably cull off, the plan is to cull off any recyclables, because we want One of the benefits of autoclaving the material is it facilitates recovery of recyclables. You no longer have to be concerned with exposure to disease or vectors. It's sterile. And we can lay it out on the screen, pick off different classes of material and quantify, all right, there was this much glass, this much plastic, this much inert material. Some of that very basic evaluation may occur at the time we make the fiber, but most of the evaluation of the fiber will be off-site.
When you sort out any of the non-desirables, whether it be bricks, materials, any kind of metallic materials, anything that would be in that mix when it comes in, where does that get placed as it's picked off that screen?
So the plan and what was discussed with the DEC is that any materials that are picked off prior to autoclaving will be managed at the Orange County Transfer Station. These materials originate within the Orange County Transfer Station waste shed. Anything that doesn't go into fiber will be delivered to the transfer station, which is on a separate parcel but immediately adjacent. And the same thing with any residue that's left over at the end. Basically, there'll be three categories of material. There'll be the fiber, there'll be inert materials that have been picked off prior to doing the autoclave, and then there's whatever's left over, the residue and other recyclables that will be quantified and then delivered to the transfer station.
And then the other question is the condensate and wastewater. You say that there'll be less than 1,200 gallons per day produced and it'll be trucked away. Does it go into a holding tank? Or is it stay within the autoclave and then get from there directly to the truck?
The plan is to have either totes or a holding tank on the floor of the building. The collected waters, the autoclave is elevated, so the water generated by that can be directed to the tankage that's on the floor. Anything on the floor can be backed up and put into the containment. And then TAM Enterprises currently services the landfill, removes the leachate from the leachate wells, collects the septic system materials from the various buildings on the property, removes liquid from the transfer station. They're on site on a daily basis and they're located a stone's throw away on Hartley Road. So we'll enter into a contract with them and they can come on a daily basis with their back truck and remove whatever's been collected.
Would those totes be stored in any kind of double containment?
No, they don't need to be. It's water.
Leachate?
It's not hazardous by any means. It's water that's been through the process, and because of that, it's classified as wastewater. But it's within the building in a contained vessel, and it'll be emptied on a daily basis.
It's in the building, but there's no curbing around the building, correct? With the overhead doors?
The plan is to, obviously, we're not going to have stuff running out of the building, and we don't want rainwater running in. As equipment is delivered, we may get one of those rubber gaskets along the front door. That'll be evaluated as equipment is delivered.
Would there be a negative slope on that? I would think you'd have a negative slope away from the door to the back and then have some kind of curving.
It is whatever it is. We're not proposing any construction. This is not Hughes's building. It's being leased from Orange County, and it's going to be turned back to Orange County at the termination of the lease. But we're not planning to tear up the floor and put a new one in or change the slopes.
I don't know if there's a need to, but assuming there's a concern about containing whatever comes out of the back of the truck.
Roll out the door.
Pardon?
You don't want it to roll out the door?
Yeah. So I guess what's the other plan to do that otherwise?
Liquid?
Yeah, liquid.
We're not intending to take in anything that's it's not like it's gonna slosh out onto the floor and there's gonna be water heading for the door. It's different classes of organic waste unloaded back in the building. Under the DEC permit, we're required to have spill prevention measures available, like speedy dry, things like that, which can be spread out. Speedy dry, for those that don't know, is like cat litter. And, you know, you have squeegees to move things around as necessary. The wettest material that I believe Hughes may evaluate would be some food waste.
I've seen compactor trucks, and I realize you may not be using compactor trucks, but certainly I've seen compactor trucks dumping at IWS and at the county, and many times when they push that out, there's quite a bit of liquid dumping onto the floor. That's the question, really.
Yeah, and that's not the intent here. It's a small scale. So, I mean, over the course of an operating day, the upper limit of operation, and Sean had a comment about this, I'll get to in a minute, cycle times, it's 1 ton batches every 90 to 120 minutes. So this is very small. This is not like a transfer station where a packer truck is unloading 12 yards onto the floor.
Yeah, when you have, I don't understand quite what truck it is. It's a small truck and it's gonna have possibly 8 yards, I think, is for 8 tons, right?
No, that's the daily volume. I think the individual trucks that come in might only have, you know, 1 or 2 yards on board.
Okay, I never took a truck that small.
Before we move on from this topic, can you just describe the difference between condensate and wastewater in the context that we're sort of exploring it?
So the process uses steam under pressure, and after the cycle, the vessel is depressurized. That saturated steam environment is run through a heat recovery unit, and the water condenses. And there's an advantage to doing that, because if you're going to make more steam, you're starting with pretty hot water as opposed to starting anew. And over the course of cycles, not 100% of what's run through the condenser is recovered. There's going to be some wastewater generated. For a water balance and for the purpose of the environmental analysis, the process uses about 100 gallons per cycle, and the maximum number of cycles a day is on the order of 8 to 12. So we represented 1,200 gallons of water use, and it just carried that forward as the potential upper limit of wastewater production. That doesn't include the porta-johns. Those will be managed separately. And the amount of water that might be recovered off the floor is de minimis compared to what's generated by the autoclave. So that's why we left the number at 1,200 gallons of wastewater. The vac truck that comes in, those typically handle like 3,000 gallons, so it's a daily pickup is not at all a problem. I don't think there was any other comment on wastewater or surface water.
If I could just get some clarification. The 1,200 gallons of condensate, you said it's non-hazardous. If it hasn't been tested and some hazardous materials went into the feedstock, something, you know, mercury, lead, asbestos, whatever, and the fibers aren't tested when they come out, how can you be sure that there's no hazardous materials present?
So the materials are being picked over and inspected before introduced to the autoclave. So household garbage, organic food waste, agricultural waste is not expected to have asbestos or petroleum constituents of any significance. We're going to see what we're putting in. So if there's, if for example, solid waste that's delivered, if you see an empty spray can of WD-40 or something, it's going to get picked off. It's not going to go into the autoclave. It would be part of the material that's delivered to the Orange County transfer station. So by having the procedures in place for receiving, inspecting, hand processing before it goes in the autoclave is how we ensure that we're not introducing something into the autoclave that would end up in the wastewater.
My follow-up, I don't know if we could even, if I could ask this here, but So this is a research and development type project, a full-scale industrial operation. Are they going through the feedstock and picking out undesirables?
Yes. If you're trying to market a fiber product for beneficial use, you can't let it become contaminated because you're shooting yourself in the foot. Let me back up. The economic driver for this type of waste processing facility is to reduce the amount of waste that has to be trucked and disposed of at landfills. So Hughes has experience in the UK operating full-scale facilities. The reason we want to do research in the United States, specifically upstate New York, is because the character of the waste is different around the globe. It's not the same as what is experienced in the UK. Regulations are different, lifestyles are different, the types of manufacturing is different. There's a lot of things that affect the character of the waste. So the autoclave process can produce up to 50–60% usable fibers that can be marketed and sold. And it goes from being a negative revenue stream to a positive revenue stream. And it's generated up in the waste shed, like here, where you produce the waste. The Hughes process can convert it, make fiber, and that fiber doesn't have to go to a landfill. I said before that the sterile waste facilitates recycling. You can recover more recyclables out of the materials that have been through the autoclave. So you increase the percentage of recyclables that go to conventional recyclable markets. All that's left over that has to go to a landfill is the residue fraction, and that typically runs like 5 to 10% of what goes into the autoclave. So the regulatory framework in New York State has undergone significant changes in the last few years. The solid waste regulations have been revised, making it more difficult to develop new landfills, and it encourages the development of other technologies. Climate Leadership Community Protection Act really put the spotlight on various industries, including the waste industry, that rely on trucking because of all the consumption of diesel fuel. And landfills as a category are emitters of significant quantities of greenhouse gases. So diverting away from landfills is really at the heart of what the Community Protection Act is all about. And then
I agree that sort of what we do now is unsustainable, just burying it, but I need to, get some clarification on the quality of the output.
And I would say that in addition to the economic drivers that Hughes faces and wanting to produce a product that's marketable, it's highly regulated by the DEC. There'll be, I fully expect over the course of the RD&D that DEC will come up with their recommendations for testing and beyond what we've already put in our document.
I have a quick question. You mentioned that the fibers get tested afterwards at a different facility, right? Do they test for hazardous materials in the fibers at that point?
So what I was speaking to is the offtake partners that make certain products. They're going to want to know strength parameters, water content, density, all the things that they have to understand for their process. And they're also, if it's going into things like cafeteria trays, to be used in nursing homes, prisons, schools, they definitely are going to want to make sure that they're contaminant-free. I can't speak to what testing the offtake partners may do, but again, whatever benefit they derive by getting a material that's more cost-effective than what they're currently using, they don't want to shoot themselves in their foot and take in a product that has a potential contamination.
So I think this all sounds good, and I hope it really works. But my question how do we know that we're not making something more contaminated? It almost seems like we're making it more dense or more, the contaminants are being increased, or whatever the percentage
So
is.
if a volume of material comes in, let's say it's household garbage, and it gets dumped on the floor and it gets picked over and certain things are removed. The things that are removed, household cleaning solutions, household hazardous waste, batteries, things of that nature, those are gonna get set aside and managed through the Orange County Transfer Station. That glomus of material is gonna be more concentrated in terms of those types of material than the original stuff coming in. But what goes in the autoclave is gonna be far less because of the economic drivers for the fiber that we're trying to produce. If that answers your question.
It does to some degree. I think that one of the things that, I think on the Wilson brochure that we were given, I think, talked about having stuff going on a conveyor belt. Is that the intention?
Well, in a larger building for a longer duration research and development project, yeah, having a sorting conveyor would be a convenience. We don't have the room in this building. This is gonna be a very basic, almost like a college lab kind of setup. There'll be some tables with like sifting screens to, we're gonna wanna know for certain when we get, say, food waste from institutional sources. Well, other things get thrown out with the food waste. We wanna be able to characterize for that type of waste. There were some plastic straws, plastic spoons, some paper wrappers. X% of the food waste is not something we want necessarily in the fiber.
When that truck backs into the building, what is it dumping into or onto? If you're sorting on a table, you're not pulling it off the truck a couple items at a time onto the table.
No,
So what is that being discharged to?
So there's a concrete floor in the building. And when the materials come in and get unloaded, they'll get spread out either using the skid steer in the building or just rake the material out.
Then the multiple employees then would just go literally.
And then the skid steer can pick up the scoop and go drop it on a table where we have a screen. All those details have not yet been worked out because all the equipment, we have to execute purchase orders for the equipment, and not all of that has been done. I believe the Hughes's interest is to get through the local process here and get through the DEC process before purchasing, expensive items.
But all that takes place in that one section that's like 24 by 20, the waste and fiber receiving processing area, and we dump there on the ground, and that all within that same.
Right, and then that material would be picked over, and the organics that are gonna go to the autoclave would be loaded in the autoclave, and then that batch would be run. So the material's not gonna sit around long. It's gonna come in, get handled, go in the autoclave, and we can't receive more material than we have room for. So this is a very limited operation.
So help me understand this sorting. Your small truck is gonna come in, unload household garbage, let's say. Will it be still bagged? Like normally, a kitchen garbage bag, right? Is household garbage. Is it gonna be in bags? You're gonna be tearing bags open and sorting through every item?
If there's bags, they have to be pulled open.
Okay, so how can an employee that's sorting, an individual sorting through this trash, how are they gonna see, how can they tell the difference between a Lysol cleaning wipe and a turpentine soaked rag? Or anything for that matter, right? I mean, they could be paint soaked rags, they could be ethylene glycol, it could be almost anything soaked in paper towels, rags, and it could be hard to tell the difference between something that's hazardous and something that's not.
You're right, it can be a challenge. It's visual inspection olfactory. I mean, the turpentine soaked rag is gonna present differently than you know, a rag that hasn't been used for cleaning paintbrushes and the like. There's depending on the source, you know, there's some objectionable things that are in the waste stream that I fully expect the autoclave will have no problem with, things like diapers and the like.
That's organic materials, yeah.
The initial sort of garbage is looking for things like household hazardous waste, cleaning solutions, batteries, electronics. Those are things that when you spread it out in an area not much bigger than what we're in this area here, you can readily see and handpick and set those things aside. To the extent that you know, there's paint soaked rags or something, those normally present themselves as such. You know it when you see it or smell it.
It sounds like the quality of that fiber is as good as the people picking the garbage. That's what it sounds like.
Exactly, I mean, and
It's
humans
almost
make
like-
mistakes.
It almost screams that it could be missed, and there could be batteries in it and not clean, right? I don't know, it's kind of.
Well, I don't know if that autoclave is gonna last long if they put something like a battery in there, but,
I don't know anything about it, but that's what it sounds like.
I mean, people use ammonia, people use Clorox, bleach.
It's gonna sit there all day long, and at the end of the day, they're gonna wash it down. And what's to stop the water from seeping out of the place? Because there isn't any, possibly a gasket across the door. But it's still subjective at this time.
Well, I think I mentioned that if one is required, we would put a gasket across the door. Again, the materials that are coming in are not gonna be, I mean, they're not Packer trucks like the example you were speaking to, where dumpsters have been out in the rain and then loose garbage goes into the Packer truck and gets compacted, and whatever liquid is in gets squeezed out, and when the Packer truck unloads, you can get some free liquid out.
Yeah.
This will be loose waste in a dumpster.
I think what might be helpful is if you could explain to us in some sort of future communication or filing, you know, what the disposition of any contaminant might be if it is sort of created during the various parts of this process. Because, you know, if it ends up in the condensate or the wastewater, I assume that there are processes that you have to deal with that and protect the community from that. If it's in the fiber, you know, I think we have to have a discussion about whether or not that's an issue that this board, you know, cares that much about. If there's cleaning residue in a fiber that's going to a third party that we're not connected with. So I think we're all aware that in the various parts of this process, there could be contaminants that are unwanted. And if we could get a better idea of how the community would be protected as those contaminants affect each part of the production process, I think that'd be helpful. Am I being clear about that?
I think so. In fact, the next item in Sean's memo is with respect to wastewater, to which he says, we recommend the applicant confirm all condensate and wastewater is stored indoors and advise of any spill prevention, spill remediation measures associated with the transfer of condensate and or wastewater to trucks. Additionally, we recommend the applicant verify the condensate and wastewater does not require any pretreatment prior to discharge at a permitted facility. So regarding the first part of those comments, we've just been having a discussion about that, and there will be measures to control spills and to address spills if they occur. On the latter part of this, from any facility in Goshen, Orange County, or elsewhere, for a transporter like TAM to come and pick it up, it has to conform with their transporter permit and the operating permit of the disposal facility. Those have varying conditions depending where you go. So if TAM is hauling, for example, to, say, the city of Middletown, transporter and the disposal facility. But this is pretty standard stuff. You can't put it on a truck and take it somewhere without demonstrating it conforms with the permits that those parties hold. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I think fundamentally, we understand that none of these steps will be done to perfection. It can't be. And to the extent that there are either regulations or processes that you guys have that protect the community or, force you to comply to regulations, I think that that's just helpful to articulate sort of as the process goes through.
So I believe in the application.
Not tonight, but sort of.
Right. Well, I believe in the application materials, we've made those representations. I mean, for TAM to come and pick something up, it's got to work within our transporter and disposal facility permits and authorizations. I don't know what else to say in that regard. If TAM can't do it, I have to call the next person on the list. TAM is convenient because they're local and they're already serving the landfill property, taking away things far worse than what we expect to be generated.
I don't think we're questioning TAM at all. I think this is our first solid waste thing we ever had to deal with. So we, I think, are inexperienced, and so we have a lot of questions, and I think our emphasis here is to make sure we do no harm to this local community. And where things go, I expect TAM will probably take it to wherever, Middletown or Fishkill or whatever. I think we're okay with that. I mean, we just don't know how to protect it here, I think. Even when you talk about the container inside that you collect the leachate, I'm assuming there has to be a special kind of container, because I know I have some at the farm that I put water in that leak. So I hope that's not the one you're gonna use. But so I think there's gotta be some, okay, so I think that's where we're coming up with the questions.
Well, you've seen the pallet-mounted totes.
These are the big cubes.
They're cubes.
They're chemicals.
They're like 300 gallons. You can pick them up. You can move them where they need to be.
And I have two of them at the farm, and both of them leak when I run water down the road to the cattle.
Yeah, but I mean, they're also made of plastic, right? So, I mean, there is a possibility of them leaking, and there is a possibility that they could be leaking. They may or may not, but they possibly may be leaking some contaminated water, right? And you're not proposing any secondary containment. 1,200 gallons not contained could easily spill from the building. I mean, that's a main concern. It's a big concern of ours.
When we deal with diesel fuel, we certainly look at double containment. We have a main tank.
Well, that's a case where it's required by regulation.
And we don't know any better. And right now, it seems like maybe it should be required here, so there is no leakage outside the building.
Mr. Chairman, can I just say something, hopefully, to kind of bring this together? So, I mean, where we are right now, you're in the secret review process, right? You're trying to understand the impacts and then potentially adopt mitigations that could
Address those.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the questions you're receiving are, the board's unfamiliar with this process, admittedly, it's a new process in this country. So I think ultimately what you're moving towards as an applicant is revising that EAF Part 3, and the board is giving you, their concerns right now verbally, and, I think you're going to try to address those. So for example, we're talking about potential contamination from leaking, maybe that mitigation is double containment, and I think that's what they're looking for.
Don't they have, this is the first of its kind here, but it's been done overseas quite a few times.
That's my understanding, that's what the applicants represented.
Are there some in
They
this
have some kind of,
The overseas operations are more full-scale, permanent type installations, installed tankage, whereas here, this is a small-scale temporary operation. We have to turn the building back to Orange County when we're done. These totes they're fairly robust. Yeah, they're made of plastic. There's no benefit to Hughes of having something leaking. They would have to shut down, replace the totes. I mean, our concerns are the same as your concerns.
They wouldn't intentionally, obviously, want anything to leak, but it can't happen to hit it with a machine around it, but it's still exposed plastic.
I could specify something else. It's just
I think that's something that the board's kind of looking for you to do, that Sean was leaning towards, is it's an expanded Part 3, this is a concern. perhaps propose some, I don't wanna use the phrase mitigation measures, but a mitigation measure to, allay the board's concerns in that regard for this facility.
Or possibly just providing a contingency on if a tow does leak.
Yeah.
What's the contingency plan to
Well,
address it?
typically, you would have spares, you store it on site somewhere, and if you run into a problem, you transfer the contents to the spare and get rid of the one that was damaged.
But just a contingency for the condensate that leaked out.
So I think it's great to get ideas tonight, folks. Okay, Dan. You guys can review it?
On a different topic, access. We're talking a 12-hour shift each day. The landfill, the training center drive is locked off, the gates at a certain hour, which is less than a 12-hour day. Are they gonna have keys to provide them access, or are they only gonna be taking deliveries only during the working hours till 3:30 or whatever it is that the landfill closes? How's that gonna work?
The receipt of materials would conform to the operating hours of the scale house, because things have to be weighed in. This is gonna be a very visible, transparent process, so there'll be no trucks going directly to the back of the
Well,
site.
even the employees' vehicles, how do they get in and out
Well,
after the hours?
You can drive to the back along the walk hill. That road's not blocked off with a gate.
So going all the way around the whole perimeter of the
No, no,
landfill,
no.
popping back out, we have these.
You know when you go in and you make the right-hand turn to go on the scale?
Right,
You can go straight,
right,
and you can go past the stormwater ponds.
right,
and
it goes all the way down. I mean, that's the path that they normally take when you go to deliver recyclables on recyclable day.
No,
That's
no,
how they have to come out.
I'm talking, if you're coming up Training Center Drive.
Right,
You have to make a hard right to get into the
Sure.
scale. Instead of making that right, go straight and
Right.
keep going, all the way to the back. You can get all the way back to the gas recovery building.
But there's a gate right after the training facility. Fire training facility has a gate right after that, blocking this road.
So those logistics have to be worked out under the license agreement.
just something just to think about.
Kelly, license agreement just came up. In the material, we talk about license and then we talk about leasing. Is there a difference legally that we have to be concerned about?
Nothing that this board needs to be concerned
And
about.
so either one works.
Either one works, if they're fixing the phrase.
Good enough, thank you.
The next item in Sean's memo is impact to groundwater. To that, he says, we recommend you verify with the applicant there's no proposal to utilize public water at this time, and confirm with Attorney Naughton your seeker review does not include any actions by the town related to water. That's my understanding. We're not, there's no reliance here on public water. I think where there was confusion, to Kelly's point earlier, this EAF is serving multiple purposes, and a future project somewhere else might rely on public water. So we were just acknowledging that the town has efforts underway to expand its public water systems without any more detail. We just point to that.
I think it was even in some of your stuff you talked about it having a larger facility have to have water and even sewer or disposal system like that.
So I think that just needs to be spelled out a little clearer, and then clarified that the town, again, it's not expanding that right now, it's exploring that. Because there's a big difference for this board, but yes, since this does include the consideration of the law, other areas, that was why it was marked off in the part 2, may use additional water, whatever the process may be.
So, and I don't want to, since we have them here, I'm going to continue that, but I want to get back to at some point in time, when we get to the overall law as to whether or not it may make some, I think it would make more sense if we had some parts of the town that would not include, such as, let's take the village's reservoir overlay district. I think there should be no solid waste there ever.
Yeah, well, one of the things that this board did was you did, the law was referred to you for a report,
Right.
and you requested additional time until the end of the secret process, so that's something to make a note of and bring up when we revisit that.
I know, but we're kind of meshing this together.
I understand, I know. I
Okay,
just-
thank you.
Moving on, the next item in Sean's memo relates to other impacts. We recommend the applicant confirm no chemicals are stored on site or applied to the process. Additionally, the applicant should describe the proposed totes and confirm the anticipated number, size, and storage locations. So the process, the autoclaving of material does not require the introduction of any chemicals. There may be typical janitorial type materials on site for cleanup. And the boiler may have some boiler additives that are to prevent corrosion. But the autoclave process itself does not require the storage of chemicals. We talked about the totes earlier, and that the totes in use would be inside the building near the autoclave. I can get more details on those.
And if you could get, I know Tony knows how to do it, but some explanation as to how you get the material out of the totes into his truck.
They suck it out. The back truck just,
He comes in, he comes in to get that, or he sticks a hose through the
right.
side of the building?
Yep.
I got 2 answers.
No, I mean.
Somebody's getting a lot of shout outs. This is like a good
No,
advertising.
look, I know Tony knows how to pick it out, but does it have to be some kind of system where, like a oil delivery, where you use it in reverse?
There's no system. Whatever's accumulated in the tote, the back truck will come in and drop the hose in and suck it out.
Maybe you can get Tony to explain that to us. Thank you.
Next category is impact on transportation. We note a slight inconsistency with respect to the estimated volume of organics of materials to be processed. And Sean, that's because the document uses the word approximately. I mean, it's like 90 to 120 minutes. We talked about 1-ton batches, but that's the upper limit of the batch. So it wasn't intended that you take the numbers and multiply them out and say it's exactly, 6 tons a day or 8 tons a day. These define the range. And then there may be up to, I would be surprised if it's the case, but you could have as much as 25% of the incoming materials picked off on a weight basis, because we don't want bricks, concrete, railroad ties, metal going into the autoclave. That's not conducive to making the fibers. So there's language in here about what goes through the autoclave, and those numbers are slightly different than what's received. So that's your perceived difference in the numbers, if that makes sense.
It's not a perceived difference, the numbers just didn't add up.
That's the explanation. Why
And I would anticipate members of the board had the exact same comment.
I had a question more about, I saw where stuff coming in goes out, but what I didn't see is the finished material with the fiber. I didn't see any shipping of the fiber going out ever.
So that's going to be arranged with the offtake partners. It'll be packaged up in drums or containers, suitable for shipping. It would be by like common carrier, or they might send their own courier. It could be shipped UPS. There's any number of ways, depending where they are and how much they want.
Okay, so talk a little bit further in there. You have the tipping floor, and then right next to it you have this other area where you're going to store the fiber. And there was a statement in there that there's going to be no construction of it. How are you going to separate or keep that stuff separate, and how are you going to keep the new stuff coming in from contaminating the finished product?
They're different areas of the floor. They'll be separated by floor that's not being used. And it may change over the course of the day.
Sure. I would have thought there'd be some kind of wall, really, just because if we're talking about the purpose of the autoclave is to kill off the bacteria and the viruses, we really are thinking that this bacteria and viruses right here next to the stuff that's going to be sanitary. I would think you're gonna separate that somehow.
We didn't want a wall because then you have to navigate around it, and the space is tight. We want to be able to use a skid steer within the building.
So on the skid steer, let's talk that, because it looks like you're gonna load the skid steer into the autoclave and unload the autoclave with the skid steer. That's the only thing, I would love to see the conveyor belts, but otherwise, once again, I think you're gonna recontaminate your own material.
I mean, we're working within the limitations of the building, and I don't believe there's going to be any cross-contamination that's meaningful. The next category was impact on human health. Sean commented that we were unable to find responses to these potential impacts within the applicant's submission. One was item 16G of the EAF Part 2, and I may have missed the check because this is part of the EAF where you also had in the margin the larger check marks. But there's no site work, there's no work or significant construction proposed. So item 16G spoke to construction-related impacts. All that's proposed is to use an existing building and to deliver to the site the autoclave and supporting equipment for setup inside the building. I kind of felt that the application materials that you provided explain that, so I guess I'm missing if there's a construction-related issue that needs to be elaborated on here. 16J, we're using materials that are generated within the greater waste shed of the Orange County Transfer Station. So it's material that would otherwise go to the transfer station. So we're not increasing or decreasing the handling of solid waste in any way. And what goes through this building is insignificant compared to what goes through the transfer station. So again, I thought that was inherently clear in our submission, so I was not clear on why this was checked. The next comment is with regards to the remediated Orange County landfill. The expanded EAF Part 3 should confirm the proposed action will be in compliance with the site management plan relative to potential impacts on human health. The site management plan is with respect to the landfill. We're not on the landfill, so that document has no bearing on this RD&D facility.
Can we just get verification of that from the DEC? Because I understand, the last thing I saw from the DEC was that they actually classified it as Operation Unit 1 and Operation Unit 2. And Operation Unit 1 included the whole site, including where this is. And Operation Unit 2 was really the landfill that's capped. So I think we're generally talking about the landfill that's capped, and we're talking about landfill.
So I'm not sure what you referred to, but the site has gone through the remedial process. A certificate of completion has been issued. There's a long-term site management plan that covers the limits of the landfill itself, the cover and everything that's within the fenced area of the landfill. And that parcel also has an environmental easement on it. Both the site management plan and the environmental easement require DEC notification for any ground intrusive activities within the easement area. We're outside of that. So those.
And all I'm asking is, can we get that material to Kelly so Kelly can verify that for us?
Well, I've represented this in the document.
I know you did, and she's our attorney.
Yes, so we need copies of that, and just as, while we're going through this, one of the things that was just raised was why it was 16I marked, and part of that is because both the board and the applicant need to remember that it's not just for this project, it involves the law as well, and so the responses need to be for all of that. And also, just as a reminder, I know you're getting a lot of verbal responses tonight, but in terms of the Part 3, you do need an amended Part 3, and all of this should be included therein. But Mark's lucky because it's being videotaped, and so he can just go back to that.
There's also, I think, as part of that thing you just said, where they look at it constantly, I think there's also some testing going on, and it would be good if we got a copy of some of that testing, because I know that as of a couple of years ago, we were still getting lower explosion limits, very close to 100% or on that property. And I'm not saying it's on this building or the other building, but I just would like to get that information so we know we don't have that issue.
Okay, we did have a pre-application meeting with the DEC, and the project manager for the remediation of the Orange County landfill confirmed that the site management plan and the easement don't apply to the former gas building.
Okay. If we get that information, great. I think Kelly can handle that.
And there's one other aspect. Part 360 has language that if a proposed solid waste management facility is within 150 feet of an environmental restoration project site, which is what the Orange County landfill is, the application has to address potential impacts to that remediated site. I mentioned earlier we're greater than 150 feet, and that puts us outside of the regulatory requirement to do that.
There's no consideration of the type of soil or anything like that?
No.
Just strictly dimensional?
Yeah, the remediation of sites like the Orange County landfill are not intended to thwart development beyond their boundaries, provided you don't disturb the cover or any part of the remedy. And that's not going to happen here because the remedy was on another parcel. And then the last comment, again, is with respect to other impacts. Sean says, we recommend the facility plan be revised to show storage locations as well as any improvements necessary to transfer stored waste to the building exterior for trucking. And I believe those are shown on the site plan drawings that have been submitted, but I can, in the part 3 of the EAF, I can point to the specific drawing just to tighten it up. That was the end of Sean's memo. If there's any other comments.
This one's kind of trivial to everything that's been said. The porta-john outside, how does that work in the middle of the winter for the employees in that building?
Very cold.
Is it going to stay outdoors year-round?
Yeah.
What do you do for hand washing?
They have the porta-johns have a sanitary...
but they're not made to handle, not if you handle all the garbage. And the other thing is, I'm not so sure that legally, as far as the building code is concerned, that porta-john qualifies as a sanitary facility for a building. Usually, if it's going to be on a site, it has to be within 500 feet of a restroom. If you have two separate buildings. I don't know, that's not my decision to make, but I think that you have to look at whether or not that's kind of the building code.
I don't know what they used when it was operating as a gas building. There were employees stationed there.
They also have the rest of the buildings there that belong to the county, as opposed to this one, which is going to be separate now. And the other thing is, what do you do for something like a body wash if you get sprayed accident or something like that? How do you wash it yourself off, or right? You
Well,
go eye wash?
we have to furnish OSHA required personal safety. There'll be an eye wash station.
And a shower, I would think.
Well, I don't know that a shower is required. The employees will have personal protective gear, Tyvek suits, gloves, hard hats, steel-toed shoes, all the things that are normal to a solid waste operation. In general, transfer stations and other types of solid waste management facilities don't have emergency shower facilities. They'll have an eye wash station if something sprays on the face.
But this isn't a normal solid waste. This has an autoclave in it, which has some other impacts or safety issues, perhaps.
Not that I'm aware. You're concerned it might overpressure and explode or something?
Well, that certainly can happen. It does happen at times.
They have pressure sensors and they will shut down if it starts to overpressure.
Sure, but I mean, it's probably 1 in 10,000, whatever, but certainly it does happen, and you can't deny that.
I mean, that really happens with any boiler plant, right? And you have pressure and temperature gauges that are monitored daily, and most times, hopefully they would do that for the safety of their employees, but.
My turn?
Your turn, Kelly.
Awesome. So, where this is all going tonight, again, is the applicant is going to provide you with an amended part 3. So it'll include all the verbal answers that you got tonight, as well as the missing information. Again, this isn't just for this project, this is also for the local law. So those items do need to be addressed in that fashion. The other thing is, it's up to you, it's your call. Did you want, I don't know when the applicant would be able to get that back to you, but I'm gonna give you the same time frame, potentially 2 months, that if you wanted to, you could set a public hearing if you so chose. And that would be June 6th, is the date that I was looking at.
What was the public hearing before?
The project, everything.
Just on the local law.
I don't
Wait,
think
the
that-
town board's gonna be here that night anyway, so it would be for that as well.
Okay, but I don't think we're anywhere near that. I think we have so many questions that we have tonight.
It's up to the board, I'm just
Okay.
putting it out there.
You know, I don't know if the board would like to get public comment in connection with seeker, right? So the next step in seeker, once the expanded part 3 revised, would be making a determination of significance. I don't know if this board wants to hear from the public before you move into that phase of the.
Sure, I think we're coming up, secret's gonna be the neg deck deposit deck. And I'm certainly not in a position right now where I'm comfortable about making any kind of decision like that.
Oh, I
No.
don't think
Okay.
we're asking you to make a decision like
And then I
that.
think, okay,
I was just asking if you wanted to schedule a public hearing 2 months out. You don't have to, I'm saying those are the next steps for this board.
And when would his part 3 response be in?
May 23rd would be the date, if you scheduled it for June 6th,
Yeah.
May 23rd.
How does that look for you, Mark?
That's achievable for me.
But again, it's your call, if you don't.
I still
feel-
have other questions otherwise.
Can,
Don't doubt that, Neil.
can
Just
can
say
I
it.
ask a question? I've had no comments on the site plan submission. Is that because you need to complete seeker before you issue?
No, but I've only commented on the site plan relative to the environmental review. You're not proposing any modification to the site plan.
Just the door.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we furnished a site plan because we need, the county took the position that site plan review is needed.
Yeah.
So we furnished a site plan. I've had no comments on it. I guess where I'm, if I'm resubmitting the part 3 documentation on or before May 23 for a June 6 hearing, I could do the same thing on site plan if I had site plan comments.
Access was one of those items, for sure. The site
Access.
plan, how vehicles will move in and out during these working hours.
And outside working hours.
Well, no, they're working
Yeah,
hours.
they're working hours.
That's the 12 hours that they're operational.
Mark, I've never had an applicant ask me for additional comments, so this is a first.
Well, no.
But what I can do is, when you make a submission on the 23rd, I can give this board, if that's what they want, site plan comments separate from EAF comments. It's up to the board, I certainly can do that.
Where I was coming from is if both boards are here on June 6th, whether there's an opportunity to complete the site plan and special permit that night.
To get
Doesn't-
approval?
Doesn't sound like it from what I
Not a
just heard.
chance. Not a chance, Mark.
Did I just ask a question on the site plan? I thought I read that there was, and I don't know the site at all, that there was all side area there was asphalt, or is that correct? Outside the building? Asphalt?
I believe it's compacted gravel.
Okay.
There may be some asphalt at the door thresholds. I'd have to check the photographs.
I couldn't tell. All right, thank you.
So, how does everyone feel as far as setting a public hearing for June 6th?
I think it's premature.
Jeremy?
I think it's fine. I think the applicant should understand that the responses have to be read and understood by the public for them to participate. And so far, what we've gotten, I don't think will be satisfying to the public. But in terms of timing, I think we can do it, for sure.
Or
I think we're gonna have extra questions, maybe a little premature. That's my opinion.
I mean, it is a public hearing. still offer
But as far as timing, I agree with
questions.
Jesse.
I would be for June sixth public hearing. As long as we get the stuff 2 weeks before that.
You'll at least hear from the public, again, you can adjourn it to another night too. So it was just a thought to get their comment.
I would need a motion. Set the public hearing for June sixth, 2024.
I'll make the motion.
Eric? No, Marty.
Man, we're gonna get named here.
I got my back to you. Go ahead. Second by,
I'll say.
was that a shameless?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
Okay, one, no. So, June sixth, and you said the 23rd documentation has to be?
Yes, May 23rd, 3 p.m., right?
Yes.
3 p.m.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
John.
We might set that midnight.
I'm gonna run out of drinks, I only drink a couple of beers.
My monster world, like a lot of.
I offered Sean some crackers. I'm waiting
Next item on the agenda is Goshen Hospitality LLC, 10-1-56.2 and 56.4. We have an application for a site plan special permit for a hotel and restaurant complex on 63.3 plus or minus acres, which is the total holdings, along Cheechunk and 6.5 Station Road in the CO District, AQ6 Scenic Road, floodplain, ponding, stream corridor, and reservoir overlay districts. And we're here tonight to further discuss the secret finding statement that was prepared for this application. Kelly?
Yes, so, Seamus is recused, and
I'm recused.
Neil's
Neil is
office as well.
You too.
Scroll down. So, I provided to the board an amended finding statement based on comments that were received. So what I did was I had accepted all of the prior comments, and then I added these comments on top. There are some additional comments that I needed the board to weigh in on. And I think the main one is what should really be discussed tonight, and that is 3 stories versus 4 stories. And some of the comments that I couldn't put in there in the alternative section a discussion on the 3 stories because I didn't know if this board was satisfied that the 4 stories had been adequately mitigated, and that, so, or if there's something additional that you'd like the applicant to present to go to the 4 stories, or if the 3 stories was adequate. So they did provide you a comparison in appendix figure something, and one of them is like the 4 stories is in blue and the 3 stories is in red, so it like
Footprint.
thank you. So I don't have direction from the board on that, and I think that's a threshold issue for this finding statement. Right now, it's sort of going towards what the project sponsor's desire was, which was the 4 stories, but I couldn't really wrap that all up because I need the board to give direction on what you're saying. That's, I think, the biggest issue.
That led to my first comment.
Oh, wow, awesome.
My concern is we did want to see a comparison between a 3-story building, whether it's 2 or 3 hotels, versus the 4-story buildings with the 3 hotels. Not just the footprint of how much space it takes up. I mean, having a larger footprint and a lower elevation could often make a building less obtrusive. we have the land to do it, to move things around a little bit. If it's an economic justification for a 4-story versus the 3-story, then I'd want to see that. You know, why, other than just saying that it would take up more space or there's a bigger foundation, you know, required for a 3-story building versus a 4-story building. I didn't see that in here as far as, you know, the justification, because that's been a concern of a number of the board members, whether it truly was evaluated in the context that we were looking for. And I don't believe it was.
And so in that regard, you're saying that the 4-story and the 3-story, in your opinion, really have not been adequately mitigated. So you're looking for some additional information from the project sponsor to get you...
To justify why, in their opinion, based on fact, it's preferred.
Your question is why 4 stories is preferred over 3 stories?
Right.
The justification for the 4-story.
Justification, you know, whether it's, you know, just to say it's not economically viable if we don't have a 4-story building, it's not adequate.
Right.
It's really got to, you know, hard numbers. Why is it not economically viable?
So,
given the context of this project.
Right, and that's a good question. And a lot of this, when we submitted our original application to the Zoning Board of Appeals initially, to request the 4 stories, we had presented a lot of that justification, and I believe a lot of that information came from the we did a comparison analysis between the 3 stories and the 4 stories. So we talked about how there'd be less grading. We talked about how there'd be less land disturbance on the 4 stories. We talked about, even though the building may be shorter at 3 stories, they're going to be bulkier, right? They're going to push out more. And we also talked about, from an operations standpoint, why 4 stories works better than 3 stories. So I apologize if that wasn't previously presented to the planning board.
If that work was done already for the zoning board, perhaps if you feel that's adequate, given what we're concerned about, presenting that to the planning board and to Sean as well, you know, just to share with the planning board.
I thought that was in the appendix of the FEIS.
I didn't see it.
Thanks.
I didn't see it.
Do you have the FEIS with you?
I do too.
Because I think
We talked about, you know, different, those built into the hills, so there were smaller retaining walls, and the wall of the hotel became part of the retaining wall, and
Correct.
You know, things like that. But it's not just, that's not converting into anything more than, these are just benefits of it, but not justifying why we should go that direction as opposed to not.
Yeah, I
You know,
mean, we
if we-
definitely outlined all of those issues in the letter to the zoning board.
But I don't think this board had, we're looking through the FAS right now, we can't find it. Can
Yeah.
you tell us the appendix number or where it was?
I'm looking also.
I mean, like, if you look at the
I mean,
draft.
I think it was referenced in the letter was referenced, but I don't think it was attached.
So maybe that might provide some of the information that...
I think it provides all the information, honestly. I think it's
Hope-
already,
hope-
that's optimistic.
hope- Hopefully it
I
will.
like that.
You gotta make that
I mean, because
determination.
we
now.
did, when we went to the ZBA, we did the whole analysis, that's what they had asked for. So it's been done.
Okay.
Well, that might actually
I'm glad we share the same concerns.
shorten this part of the evening. I think that's a really big, like I said, threshold matter, so if they can submit that, then I think we could...
I mean, can I just go through what it says and see if there's more that you're looking for? Because I don't want to walk away and not, and...
Absolutely, but
Okay.
it's 10 o'clock at
I
night.
still want to see it around.
Yeah, they're still gonna wanna see it, so I would say
I
like...
understand that,
highlight.
but I think she just wants to give them an outline of what we
It's
did.
right here. Yeah,
In case you
yeah, the
want more.
highlights, that's what I'm talking
We
about.
waited 2 hours, so.
Right.
Sorry.
No, I'm not saying we're gonna
Well, I
cut
have
you
other
off.
comments that you can discuss after the fact, besides that one.
Well,
Not a
let's
problem.
focus on this one, because this seems to be a big threshold issue.
So we had put together a table that had the total disturbance area for each of the plans. The open space provided by each of the plans, the impervious surface area, the volume of earthwork, the size of each building footprint, and then the total building surface area.
How about visuals
We provided visuals.
of a 3-story versus a
Yep.
4-story from various
Yep.
vantage points.
From all the, yep.
Yes.
If we get that in writing, just get a copy of it.
Yeah, no, that sounds,
That might be just enough.
Okay.
that sounds.
I apologize, I thought it was
Yeah, I thought it was
part of the
record.
FEIS. or-
I was just looking, and so we have the footprint one that I was talking about, and then, like site plans for, more detailed site plans for the 3-story zoning compliant alternative. But that was it, but that's, takes care of like my hugest point for this evening. So, okay, so point 1, check. Jane's got it, she's like already hitting send. So, the next thing was, hold on, I've got a bunch of these things open on my screen. Okay, so the applicant had a couple of comments that they then sent in. John, do you want to review those? Or do you want me to read them out and you can go from there? Or do you have them?
Yeah, I think there was only 3 of them, so.
There's only 3.
Right, so, yeah, I have it right here. So on page 33, one of them is just really clarification on mitigation measure number 7, where we talk about the westbound ramp on Fletcher Street overpass will be reevaluated within 6 months after completion and full operation of phase 3B. And then it says again, after subsequent phases. I'm assuming that's after 6 months after completion of the phase 4, which is the only subsequent phase.
Do you wanna discuss it now, or, so I sent your comments, or Kelly sent your comments over to John Cannon, and we discussed it with John, and John was okay with changing that to just make it more clear.
Right, because I just want to make sure there's, 6 months after we're fully complete, we'll do the study. I don't want to be responsible a year, 2 years down the road doing further monitoring. I just want to make sure, it is what it is, because obviously there's going to be other projects that, are going to impact.
On that point though, I think full operation is a term that was injected into this draft.
Yes.
Can we define what that means?
I think we did actually, because it had been full occupancy.
Right.
Hold on.
Yeah, I don't.
I was supposed to, so, but I thought that I did, so.
Is that why you moved the table far away?
Yeah, so nobody could throw something at me.
It's also a bigger table.
I usually don't even get to sit with them, I sit by myself.
I don't mean to interrupt everything, but
it needs
seems
to
like
be
a big
defined,
one.
because I thought that I did, and I specifically actually talked to John Canny about it, and what he had said was full operation meant that the 3 hotels and the 2 restaurants were operational. It doesn't mean,
Not
it
every
wasn't
seat
meant
and
to
every
be,
bed.
right, it wasn't meant to be full occupancy, but it needs to be defined.
What was in the original document was full occupancy, and that obviously creates a lot of ambiguity. So I think John, or maybe John first, had recommended this other language, but if you're looking for a definition on that, we can provide that definition. But that's what it's intended to mean when the construction is completed.
But I thought I did, but I'll define it the first time it's used.
So my second comment, again, on the potential westbound ramp traffic light. It sounds like that one, whether it's needed or not, is still kind of up to debate, and it's up to further review by the New York State DOT. So I just want to have some clarifying language in there that basically states if the New York State DOT concludes that a light is not necessary, that doesn't necessarily preclude the applicant from moving forward with the project, because the DOT has the ultimate jurisdiction to determine whether the light is necessary or not. And I think that's the intent, but I just want to make sure 4 or 5 years down the road, when everyone's looking at this, that it's clear.
John had actually a very interesting take on this, and his take was a little bit different in terms of what if the light isn't the actual mitigation DOT wants? What, just for example, the DOT comes back and says we have to replace the bridge, right? So there could be another mitigation that the DOT comes back with that wasn't evaluated. So what John had suggested, and he won me over to this, is insertion of a sentence that says, in the event that approval for any of the above mitigation measures or similarly affected equivalent is denied by any of the approving agencies, the project sponsor developer must reapply to the planning board to have the mitigation measures evaluated so approval can be obtained. And that, you know, whether it's being taken out or whether it's being added or something else. So if there's something other that we've missed, you have to come back. Goes both ways.
But the applicant's not gonna be responsible for replacing a bridge.
Well, what if the DOT comes back and says that? John says this is an extreme example, of course, but what he's trying to do is say that it can go both ways. They can say that's not required, but they can also say, well, this is also required. So.
Right, well, that, I understand that because
They're not gonna give us.
they're not gonna give us the permits, and we're not gonna be able to build without their approval, so they have the ultimate authority. So, I mean, that's fine, if you wanna have language that says could be more, could be less.
I was okay with what was in there. This is in response to your request for.
Right, I mean, as long as everyone understands that you know, if a light, if the DOT says that a light is not required, then it doesn't affect the project.
No, the way this is worded would be that you would come back to evaluate any other mitigations that they may either take out or put in.
We can send you this to think about if you want.
Yeah.
We're obviously not gonna
I
act on this
didn't
tonight.
get that take on this language.
Well, I don't think you have this. I just got this from John.
Okay.
So we'll send it to you so you can look at it, so you're not on the spot tonight.
What was the third item?
The third item, again, mainly in connection with the proposed or potential traffic light on the west, no, I think on the east, I can't remember which one, on the westbound, yeah. So, the question is, you know, whether this light is necessary or not, probably won't be known for a couple of years, if not a few years. So the applicant just wants to make sure they have the opportunity to seek fair share contributions from other future potential developers that may come down the road. So again, I think this is really more of an issue with the town board in trying to develop some type of developers agreement where at least we have the option or the opportunity to seek a fair share contribution from a future developer. Doesn't mean that we're not still on the hook for it, but you know, the idea is that if we do have to build it, but somebody's coming in right after us, that we would have the opportunity to seek contribution.
I don't think it's precluded by the language that's in there. I only actually referenced it, I think, once, that the applicant indicated that the project sponsor would provide a fair share contribution to assist with the implementation of safety measures. It doesn't preclude, it doesn't, that was what our discussion was previously, that you didn't want it precluded, and I don't think that this does.
And John had a similar response.
Right, and I think he was okay with that.
Yeah, so I had gone through it specifically for that one. I think those were my big comments. Lee, you look like you've got a lot of post-its.
A lot of little ones, I mean, I can go through them very quickly.
It's fine.
As fast as you can flip your pages.
Well, if they're typos and stuff, can you just send
It's not
them
just
Kelly and hand it off?
It's not just typos.
Okay.
I mean, most of them are, or questions about redundancies and some of the sentences.
Okay.
Can we give it a try?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You're gonna give me a complex, not these complex.
Nah. Page 9.
Starting on page 9, that's a good start.
Oh, it's a very good start.
Yeah.
Okay, the paragraph that says the above conditions shall be mitigated, have been mitigated, I would just add in the words to the extent
Wait, I
practical.
don't have that on page 9.
It's in A7, if that helps. After the ABC, it's that next
Okay.
paragraph. The above conditions have been mitigated to the extent practicable.
Okay.
Page 12, just, that's a typo. The paragraph says as an alternative to on-site waste, water system rather. The water, halfway through it says the water main extension will be required, a permit will require. On mitigation finding B3, it says the proposed action intends to incorporate EPA water sense. But on page 37, G4 says it will be required, so maybe we want to make them consistent instead of intends to.
Okay, are you
Just a will?
guys, you're gonna incorporate those? Can I make it?
Well, I missed the second one, so,
On B3,
yeah, I know, but
but on page 37, and under energy,
okay.
G4 says will be required to.
Yeah, I got the include water sense, but there was a comment you said between mitigated to the extent practical, and then when you.
Oh, that was just a typo
Where was
on
that?
A7, what was that, what was that?
Oh, underwater,
It was under the water, right?
I scrolled down.
Under water resources, the last paragraph, before the mitigation.
Okay.
It should just say, this water main extension will require a permit.
Instead of will be required a permit. So then for B3, if the applicant is incorporating these water sense,
And it should be the word
then it
will.
should just say will incorporate instead.
Will incorporate, okay.
The next page, the last paragraph before mitigation, the last sentence, it says this will may require.
Sorry,
You gotta lose one of those words.
yeah, I put in may, but forgot to take it.
Again, on page 17, which is plants and animal resources, C4.
Okay.
Again, should say the sanctuary habitat will be buffered to the extent practicable. On F, traffic and transportation resources, the first sentence is missing words. Overall, when fully constructed, the number of vehicles traveling to and from the site, with the project adding between 333 and 444 total trips. But it's missing something.
I'm gonna make,
Yeah, I got it, Mr. Chairman. It should be overall, when fully constructed, the number of vehicles traveling to and from the site with the project added will be between 333 and.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay.
will be this way.
Okay.
I want you to know, like 6 other people also reviewed this and did not catch it.
That's all right.
He's good.
He's an eagle eye, this guy.
Page, I do suffer from it. Page 33, which would be, which section would that be? I guess it's all the traffic mitigations. Number 7, it says the developer will be required to escrow. Should be the applicant?
Oh, yeah, it's in there twice.
The next paragraph after mitigation 16. The project sponsor is required to make a fair share contribution to assist in implementing the following mitigation measures. The words are required to be implemented by the project developer or sponsor should be taken out. It's redundant. It's repeating itself.
Where was that one? I'm sorry.
Page 34, item 16.
Right after item 16, first paragraph.
Oh, I see.
Again, I think I've mentioned this before, G3, it says will be required, that's water sense, we spoke about that.
So we're gonna change it then.
On page 43, right before the mitigation measures for land use and zoning, it says the proposed project is consistent with a number of the goals and policies. I think it should probably say in the project sponsor's opinion, it's consistent.
And where is that again? It's under land use and zoning.
Under land use and zoning, right before mitigation measures, the findings rather. The proposed project, in the project sponsor's opinion, is consistent. Because I would question items 2 and 3, but certainly number 2. that it enhances open space and public space by doing all this construction.
Yeah.
I mean, it is zone CO.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, it's CO, it's not that it's not consistent with the plan as far as zoning, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that it enhances the view, as opposed to a nice rolling meadow or a hill that just is green.
I think it's all in context as far as in development, with all the landscaping and the architectural
Conservation
components.
easements.
In your mind, do you
Well, I
think
think
that
that's
would
again,
spend
it's
space? I
in
don't
the
know.
project sponsor's
That's why-
opinion, he's saying it's his
Right.
opinion that it's not, but he's recognizing your
Yeah,
opinion.
But if you
you're
put those
looking
words
at
in
it-
there-
You're looking at it from nothing to what's being
Sometimes
built.
nothing is a good thing, but that's
Not
why,
if you own the property.
that's why, I'm not saying you shouldn't build on it. I'm just saying that it should say in there those extra words in your opinion, the sponsor's opinion, because it's not our opinion necessarily. It's our finding statement. So it's in your opinion that it meets those three criteria. That's all. I'm not saying take it out. And then on page 45, this is for air quality, item F. It says work to ensure proper maintenance of generators, but then we have a K4 that says emergency generators will be maintained in good operating condition. It sounded redundant, this is different generators.
It's a little bit redundant, and I didn't take it out because it was a specific request from one of you. So I saw that it was up there but it says the project will investigate or use these. So it may just investigate it, but it was a board member said
That's
that they
fine.
will be maintaining. But again, if you don't mind.
It doesn't hurt anything, it's just that it's just there.
That was why it was more specific there in case it wasn't implemented.
Sure. And then the very last item, on page 46, all the references to project and project site should be capitalized.
46 is what?
That would be
page for me?
right before the mitigation measures on fiscal impacts. It's that last paragraph before mitigation findings.
Okay.
Was that quick enough?
Oh, it was fine, I'm not trying to cut anybody up. The reason I said that before was because I didn't want Jane to read the whole letter. I wanted to.
That's faster than my typing.
That's awesome.
Other comments from the board?
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
So, Lee, if I'm not mistaken, I saw an email from Phil. He had some comments and some,
He did.
A lot of those
Some
were
of them recovered.
actually picked up by the chairman.
Covered
just
by-
now,
okay.
yeah. I
Yeah,
was
that
actually
was-
going
just wanted to make sure that
I
anything
took
wasn't shot.
no, I took a look at his list, I took a look at Diana's list. She also had sent in comments.
Just wanted to make sure.
Kelly?
Well, I think, Jane probably already hit send on that email, so if she did, we can take a look at this. I don't know what's on your agenda in 2 weeks, but maybe we could have a additional red line version for 2 weeks, and I'll try and accept and then just show you the differences. Just to, even again, if you have further discussion on that night, that's fine. I just don't want this one to get lost in the shuffle, so you can tie up whatever, if you need more, or if you're acting, keep it in the forefront.
I mean, the only board members we have missing right now is Diana and Phil. Everyone else here, sort of coming up with anything subsequent to the meeting,
Yeah,
would have been mentioned tonight, perhaps.
hopefully, but maybe when you get the information that's provided to the ZBA, it may trigger something for you to
Yes.
think about. And then, again, whichever way it goes, I do need to provide amended language in here to close that
Yes.
loop
Mhm.
on both the alternative, the preferred project
Right.
for them, so I would ask Sean, but because I don't know what is in your queue for you guys, if we could put it on for in 2 weeks.
Yeah, so you had 2 late entries today for applications that came in, nobody was expecting them. You got Healy, 17 Flex, and then you also had Golden State, so you had 3 applications.
Golden State is the water protocol?
Yeah, it's just a well test protocol, yeah. And they just want to really come back because it's been so long since they want to confirm that it was approved.
I do not see any reason why we can't add this to the agenda.
Does 2 weeks work for you guys?
Yes, thank you very much, we appreciate that. It's worth the wait.
Jane's like, wait, I have no internet, I can't hit send.
In all fairness, I saw you chuckling a couple times back there, so that wasn't that bad.
Were you bringing the coffee?
We're not that way.
Agreed. Okay. So I guess that's all we can do on this project right now, so
That's all for tonight.
thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, man.
Have a good night. Sean, you kind of already addressed your items, that's it?
I have one more item that is on your agenda.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
The local law.
Yes, you. I thought you were.
Nope. You kind of just jumped Sean ahead of the schedule.
You know, I just wanted to give Sean his due.
That means I can go home, right?
Not a chance. If I'm here, Sean's here.
One-page memos from Sean from now on.
Right?
One-page memos.
It's all these.
One page.
There.
Double space.
Okay. All in space how it comes in.
Really, Sean?
Thanks, sure. Apparently that's where you buy chicken.
Everybody knows it's
Spinning out.
We're chicken.
6, that's why, minimum 6.
Okay, are we good? You have everything here? Okay.
Sorry.
No, no problem. Next item on the agenda is introductory local law number 5 of 2024. A local law amending the town of Goshen zoning code chapter 97 to update provisions related to the replenishment of applicant escrow deposits. We're here tonight to discuss the proposed law and any reference to the town board.
So this proposed law amends the escrow requirements. So when you get an application, they pay a fee, they pay an escrow. That escrow is charged for any mailing, consultant fees comes out of it. So none of it is charged to the town. What this law does is it says when that falls below 25% of whatever was required, it has to be replenished to 100%. And that's basically so that the building department doesn't have to chase things down and so that it doesn't go into the negative. That way, it also doesn't slow down things on the planning board's agenda where we've had this come up before and we've had to say you're not on the agenda unless you get the building department to check by 5 today. So that's the purpose of it.
I have 2 comments.
Okay.
First one being on section 2E, saying if the escrow deposit falls below 25%, the applicant shall, unless the requirement is waived by the chairman. I'm not too sure I want that responsibility. Why not either the planning board as a whole? Right?
You caught that.
Yes, I caught it. That one, and the other question was, if we're telling them they have to replenish within 10 days of being notified, are they being notified by certified mail where they have to sign for it so it starts the clock?
They've provided their contact information, so usually all of that communication is either, usually most people email these days, so it's to the same people, but this doesn't require anything
Okay.
specific.
So, but there is a tracking mechanism for that, starting the shot clock.
She emails them.
I email them.
Okay.
But if you want something different, if you want something.
No, I just want, as long as it's covered, you know, because it just said 10 days after being notified. I didn't know if they were notified by phone, by
I've actually
leaving a
found
message.
that emailing them is the best way. That way I have record that they've been emailed.
Perfect.
We've mailed them and I don't feel that it's unless you certify mail them, I think emailing is the best way.
Email works.
And I'm actually emailing them and they're,
Right.
like, usually they're consultants.
Yes, that creates a tracking mechanism.
Mhm.
Yeah. Perfect. Other comments from the board? Neil?
I question, I've dealt with this for a long time, and I question really whether or not this is adequate. Because I think the biggest issue I ever had in the past was that when we get to the point where we're doing an EIS, all of a sudden, when an EIS comes in for a bigger project, all of a sudden we have consultants that we don't normally see in front of us. We have the hydrogeologists, we have the traffic, we have possibly the ecological, and so all of a sudden, it's very possible for us in 1 month after we get the EIS, and it's very possible for us to spend $40,000 without thinking about it, and that may be a low number at this point. So, let's say we started at the beginning of February. By the end of February, so in the first week of March, maybe the second week of March, we get the bills from all our consultants, and it's $40,000. Now, we're continuing going forward because we don't stop the EIS just because it made it into the next month. We keep on going, and so 10 days later after that, we've already added some more money into that, what's going into there. And what happens is that projects walk away at that point in time and say, well, obviously I'm not gonna go, I have to go back and I have to submit some more for the EIS or whatever, for the FEIS. And we have had consultants stuck for $12,000, $15,000 for 3 years.
Or
lost.
paid.
Right, handler's property was certainly one of them. So, look, I think the law needs to help out. I am not denying it. I'm just questioning whether this is good enough or whether we should try to come up with something better.
Are you thinking something where the percentage is higher or something where the replenishment length is shorter?
I think it's gotta be higher because, it's also almost gotta be, the amount of money in the escrow has to change depending on where they are in the process. Look, we don't spend $10,000 on a project most months, but when we get to the EIS, we're spending $40,000, $50,000 sometimes. Legoland was way beyond that, but I'm talking in most, say, Goshen Hospitality at that point or whatever. I think we're spending more than that in a month. And Henler walked away because Henler realized they weren't going to do it, and so they stuck us for, I think it was $12,000, $13,000. Rieger stuck them for 3 years for $15,000. You know, they use our consultants for bankers.
The way some communities deal with that particular issue, Neil, is that just in your fee schedule, you might have an EIS. So if somebody has to submit an EIS, it may be a percentage of the project cost, or it may be a set dollar amount, and you may have another trigger that it
Some sort of escalation.
Yeah, so with EIS, Neil is 100% right, that is usually a difficult time in the application process, because the applicant will have a lot of hours, and then they'll disappear for a long period of time. So that's how some places.
So as opposed to doing a part 3.
Yeah, part 3 usually is not as complicated, it usually goes much faster.
But that's kind of outside the scope of the local law that's been referred to us, right? I mean, the law that's being referred to us is really not setting the amount of escrow, it's setting the amount that triggers replenishing that escrow to the original amount, whatever that may be, right? You know, the table of fees hasn't been referred to us.
I'm addressing Neil's comment.
No, I get what you're saying.
So it would be like a recommendation that the law would be acceptable, but potentially consider modifying the fee schedule to address environmental impact statements. That's the only thing I can think of.
My answer is, Grace and Frank are going to be the ones chasing it, so whatever helps for that.
What's to prevent an applicant walking away at any certain point?
No, they absolutely can.
So,
Do you mind if I comment? So actually, Frank and Joe have had me do this actually now probably for like the last 4 months, basically. And Jen actually made a comment to me today. So I've gone from having sent out probably 6 to 10 notices in the last 4 months to having sent out 1 today. And Jen actually commented, basically saying, she's like, wow. Because I literally I put stickies on it. So I get the invoices in, I get Sean and Kelly's invoices in, and I leave stickies on. I'm like, this project is now on hold. And literally, I've gone from literally sending out like 6 to 10 notices out to sending out 1 today. So it is working.
I think we're much more on top of it, with all due respect to Neil, he didn't have the staff that Frank has, but I think we're much more on top of making sure that she's regulating what's coming in from Kelly and what's coming in from Sean and what's coming in from the consultants, and she's able to notify immediately that applicant and get it done. You know, and that has to do with staffing. So Neil Frank has that staffing, and we're getting it done.
And
I don't think
twice a month, we're basically getting in, or I'm taking those invoices twice a month, and I'm going through, and I have a whole list of all of our projects, and twice a month I'm going through and seeing what we have left, and keeping those balances basically where we want them. So
if it works for you now, great. I just concerned consultants still get shorted.
I'm just going back to, you know, an applicant can walk away at any point, and we're gonna be in that situation where maybe monies are owed for the,
Yeah, no, they absolutely can.
Yeah.
So usually the worst part is that usually at the EIS level, because then it's big mass money.
But the only way that we would get beat is if the consultants that we have aren't billing on time. They could get stuck, and I'm not throwing a shot at you guys, but if if your billing isn't coming in and Grace doesn't know that Sean, you got a $10,000 bill coming on XYZ project, she doesn't know, and all of a sudden, they come to a board meeting and they say, screw you, we're walking out of here. Yeah, there's that chance. So everybody has to work together on it.
No, I agree, but my concern is, again, if just before the EIS comes in, if they're sitting there with 40% in there, Grace is not gonna send the letters out, in which case, we're gonna get sunk fast.
True, I agree. I do know that one thing that Grace does when a big project is coming in, she usually says something like,
How much you gonna need?
how much do you think? To see if what's there for whatever the big portion of the project is. She can be like, that's it, you know, even if 40% is in there, I need 20,000. But again, that's not part of the law, just how she.
Yeah, if it's a deck, I'm not gonna ask them for $20,000. You know what I mean? If it's Goshen Hospitality, I'm gonna make sure that there's a decent amount.
I know that there were people in the past when, if they stuck us for a while, I used to make it double. Just, next time, you're not gonna stick us again.
That's true.
so we'll still continue that practice, but we're talking about this law that's in front of us, right?
In case you get questioned, yeah, this gives, it gives Grace some flexibility, it gives the rest of the staff in there some flexibility to say, hey, look, you have to because it's right here.
If staff is good with it, I'm okay with it.
So in terms of a report back to the town board, did you want to include a recommendation to take a look at the fee schedule regarding EISs? You got one yes?
I think so. I'm looking at Grace and Frank.
Well,
The
there's
only
one on the
concern
board,
I would
so
have with the EIS is whatever amount they have to put up front. At that point, we don't know if it's gonna be EIS or not. So if we're saying we're gonna replenish up to the amount, the original amount, that original amount may not be adequate for a full-blown.
Yeah.
So I think there's gotta be some trigger that if it goes to an EIS, maybe they've gotta replenish to 150% or something.
Yeah, I
different.
don't think it would be so much in replenishment. I think that any fee schedule change, and obviously this is a town board matter, but any fee schedule change would be, you need to put up, if like a positive declaration is adopted, if that's where you go, you know that an EIS is coming, and then there's a separate category on the fee schedule for inspection.
But you wouldn't know that when it's initially submitted.
Well, you wouldn't know when it's initially submitted, which is why when you see it in other places, it's under like, it's under a different category and a different amount is required for escrow if you're going the EIS process.
Why don't we just change it and say, bring it to escrow down to 100% of the fee schedule, or an updated fee schedule, instead of saying initial deposit?
I think the initial deposit is 100%.
I'm sorry?
They're the same thing, the initial deposit is 100%.
Yeah, but that could be a lower fee schedule, right? If all of a sudden they need an environmental review, it could be higher, right? So you just bring it up to 100% of the initial deposit, which could be low.
That was what I'm saying.
Okay,
So
how
if
about
you change it to the, whatever, the fee schedule,
To
appropriate fee
100%.
schedule, then.
of the required escrow, I would say.
I think that would cover it better.
Right, instead of saying initial, it would be 29.
Okay, that makes sense. So by making that change, then it sounds like the board does want to include a recommendation to look at the fee schedule. And then potentially either remove the requirement that could be waived by the chairman, or have it be the planning board as a whole.
And I think so. But I was gonna say, one of the other reasons to possibly raise the fee schedule is the cost of not recording. Is added. It's supposed to cover our expenses.
Mark that down. You got that?
You have the fee schedule, we were gonna redo it,
Okay.
remember?
Oh.
In December? Right,
Right.
Carly, you got it.
I-
Right.
So I have a lot posted on my desk, so Joe doesn't need to write it down, it's already written down on my desk.
We don't need to.
She was
review the
busy
fee
doing
schedule.
minutes.
I got them all done. I got all the minutes done. Okay, Mr. 30-page memo that we went through tonight. Okay,
What
so
else do we have?
I need a motion to authorize a report to the town board based on
Is that gonna be Marty or?
Are we changing the
Tell us.
25%?
You're confused. It's got one on each side of the bookends.
Who's my motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Neil, second by
I'll second.
Giovanni. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
I'm getting Gio loud through the speaker. I think he's the only one.
Okay. If there's nothing else, have a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Giovanni, second by. Seamus, all in favor, say aye.